Welcome, everyone, to today's Town of Chatham Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. The date is June 24th, 2021. This meeting is being recorded and will be available shortly hereafter for scheduled and on-demand viewing on any smartphone or tablet device. If anyone else is recording the meeting, please let us know. This meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals is being conducted remotely in accordance with Section 20 of Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021 and shall afford adequate alternate means of public access via Microsoft Teams by calling the phone number 1-508-945-4410. Then you have to punch in the conference ID number, which is 430-711-494, and then hit the pound sign. Or you can join the meeting online via Microsoft Teams through the link in the posted agenda. Despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide for real-time access, and we will post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. In accordance with town policy, the public can speak to any issue, hearing, or business item on the agenda during the meeting when recognized by the chair. So first, we need a roll call by all members to authorize this form of meeting. So I don't need a motion. It simply is a roll call to do it. Start with Dave Veach.
David H. Veach, present.
Well, you need to say yes.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Paul.
Paul C. Semple, yes.
Dave Thompson. Mr. Thompson?
Did you hear me, sir?
No, I did not.
Do you hear me now?
I do.
Thank
So
you.
I guess that was a yes. Buck?
James M. Upson, yes.
Dennis?
Dennis Sullivan, yes.
Megan?
Megan Story, yes.
Bill?
William Grau, yes.
And David Gatz Nixon says yes also. Okay, I'll quickly review how the meeting will be conducted. To begin with, I would say that any citizens or non-board members participating in the call via the phone only give us their name and the last four digits of their phone number for identification purposes. The hearing notice will be read by Sarah B. Clark. She is the PPO, Principal Permitting Officer for the Town of Chatham, as well as our Executive Secretary and also Executive Secretary for the HBDC. The application will then be presented by either the individual or group or a representative. And ordinarily, and I say this because I'm going to change this up a little bit for one of the hearings, but after the presentation, I would ask for anyone in the audience who wishes to speak in favor to do so. And you do this by indicating on the screen so that Sarah can pick you up and recognize you. Then I would read any and all correspondence that we might have. Then I would ask for any member of the audience who wish to speak either against the appeal or might have a specific question to do so. Again, and you have to be recognized and indicate to Sarah that you'd like to speak. Then we could always have rebuttal and then questions from the board members. And then we'd move on to close the public hearing, go into deliberation, and we'd have a vote. And the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, you need to be successful, you need a supermajority. In our case, there are 5 votes. You need to get 4 in your favor to be successful. All votes are taken by roll call in this form of meeting. And I should say that voting today would be Dave Veach, Paul, Dave Thompson, and Buck, but only up until 6 o'clock because I believe Buck has another meeting that he must go to. So any vote after 6, Dennis, you would take any votes after 6 o'clock, please. Okay, so I asked Mark Van Bork to give us an update and our goal to start meeting in the studio at the annex as of July 22nd. Mark, how's it look? How are we doing?
Mr. Chairman, we are on track for July 22nd. We look forward to your return.
Excellent, thank you. And we look forward to it too. Okay, first order of business. Sarah, would you read application 21-056, please?
Application number 21-056, 34 Hallway Street LLC, care of Michael D. Ford Esquire, P.O. Box 485, West Harwich, Mass. 02671, owner of property located at 34 Hallway Street, also shown on the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 17C, Block 37, Lot 16A. The applicant seeks to modify special permit number 20-014 granted on June 11th, 2020, which allowed for the demolition of the existing dwelling and garage and the construction of a new dwelling. The applicant now seeks to modify special permit number 20-014 to allow for the modification of condition number 5 to allow for only interior construction from July 1st through Labor Day from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. on weekdays. The lot contains 39,914 square feet in the R20 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 9, and Section 8D2B of the Chatham Protective Bylaw.
On Tuesday, June 22nd, Sarah received the following email from Michael Ford. Dear Mr. Nixon, in the matter of application number 21-056, please be advised that the applicant advises that construction under special permit 20-014 will be completed as of June 30th, 2021. Accordingly, please accept this email as a request of 34 Hallway Street LLC to withdraw without prejudice its request for a modification to condition number 5 of special permit 20-014. Paul, I believe we need a motion on that.
Yes, this is Paul Semple. I will move to grant the requested motion to withdraw without prejudice.
David Veach seconds.
Okay, then we need to vote on that. Dave Veach,
Veach votes yes.
Paul,
Semple votes yes.
Dave Thompson,
Thompson votes yes.
Buck,
Upson votes yes.
and I vote yes. Okay. So, Mr. Riley, are you with us? Mr. Riley?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, very good. Then we will proceed with application 20-081. Sarah, please.
Application number 20-081, Katama Point LLC, care of William F. Riley Esquire, P.O. Box 707, Chatham, Mass. 02633, owner of property located at 68 Shell Drive, also shown on the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 14K, Block 7, Lot W50. The applicant seeks to enlarge, extend, or change a non-conforming dwelling on a non-conforming lot via the relocation of a portion of the existing dwelling and conversion into a guest quarters and the construction of a new dwelling and swimming pool. Also proposed is the installation of a new driveway as allowed by special permit under Section 4A3D. The existing dwelling is non-conforming and that it is located entirely within the Coastal Conservancy District, floodplain elevation 11. Proposed guest quarters and new dwelling will be non-conforming in that they will be located within the Coastal Conservancy District where a 50-foot setback is required. The existing building coverage is 3,697 square feet, 43.7%, and the proposed building coverage is 7,635 square feet, 90.3%, where 15% is the maximum allowed. The lot is non-conforming in that it contains 8,455 square feet of contiguous buildable upland where 20,000 square feet is required for a single dwelling. The lot contains 100 square feet in an R40 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Sections 6 and 9, and Sections 5B and 8D2B of the Chatham Protective Bylaw. This was continued from December 17th, 2020, January 28th, March 11th, and April 22nd, 2021.
Okay, Mr. Riley, you're on.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and board members. I'm representing Katama Point LLC and the Giacalone family who would like to construct a new home on this lot. The lot is presently the home of a building which is believed to be the oldest existing structure in Chatham, having been a portion of it, having been built by the son of William Nicholson, the founder of Chatham, and believed to have been constructed prior to 1700. As a result, we're really looking at a property that has had a single family dwelling on it and barns and other outbuildings continuously for over 300 years. And we're faced with the classic conundrum where the federal government, in its wisdom, and the town, in its wisdom, has decided to use the floodplain as a method of determining, a buildable lot. Considering the fact that this property predated zoning in Chatham by about 250 years, we think that the board should be generous in its consideration of building coverage. The lot has, as Sarah read, the lot has a gross area of 120,000 square feet. The proposed construction, our coverage is approximately 7,000 square feet. And that is 6% or less of the area of the lot. Now, because we're supposed to use buildable upland, and we only have 8,455 square feet of buildable upland, that would mean that 1% of buildable upland is 84 feet. And, you just, to apply rules that are determined by FEMA, to a lot such as this one that is so large, 3 times the size of the required area in the zone, we think is, something that the board should look on with some generosity. As a part of this application, the oldest portion of the existing structure is going to be preserved and moved and treated as a guest house, and candidly at no small expense by the Giacalone family. And and that is something else we think that the board should have in mind when making its determination. So what I'd like to do at this point is to introduce Clay Smook, who is the architect, and ask him to explain his discussions with the Giacalone family and the design philosophy, that led us to this design that's before you today. Clay, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes.
please identify yourself.
My name is Clay Smook, S-M-O-O-K. I'm with Smook Architecture up here in Boston.
Okay.
And I've been practicing in the Commonwealth since 1989. And I've been doing waterfront homes since then as well. And the Giacalones came to me, I guess it was now 18 months ago, and asked me to look at this property. I was very excited about it, specifically because of their passion actually to save a portion of the existing house and relocate it on the site for all to see, because it's probably one of the oldest structures short of when I lived across the street from Paul Revere's house. So it was pretty exciting for me to do. They have a growing family. They have 3 children who are reaching adulthood. They have Lori's parents and Joe's mom's still alive, and he has a brother with special needs. And they came to me and they said to me, we really want to build a home for generations. And the fact that they wanted to build it on this site, which was in fact a home for generations, is just just really, really exciting. It comes with um, its own special challenges, not only in that we need to raise the first floor to an elevation, I believe it's 13 feet. And then there's, of course, the height restriction that we can't go higher than 30 feet, that we have a fairly tight envelope to fit this stuff in. But it also comes with another challenge in that the view is actually due north. And, I really wanted to figure out a way to design this house so they could get that warm light into all of the rooms, and also get the cool breezes coming off the water. So what I did from a straight planning standpoint, and my background is both in architecture and urban design, is really look at this a little bit like an urban design project. It's really built around sort of two sort of courtyards, the south courtyard, the north courtyard. And what I try to do is sort of stretch the program of the house out east to west, so that most rooms will have 2 or 3 exposures, which is just really, there's a lot of talk lately about, LEED design and green design. And back when I started in architecture in the 80s, we used to just call it smart design, creating rooms that have good circulation, that have adequate overhangs for summer shading, and also for light penetration throughout the house. So the design cues from the project actually came from the site itself, as well as just sort of the history of Chatham and the history of New England architecture. Rather than creating what I would simply call an estate home, the idea was to think about this house much in the way that we see New England houses are built. New England houses, as you know, are built, you sort of have the big house, which is the primary homestead, and it grows over time. And you may have heard of the book and it's called Big House, Little House, Back House, Barn, about how buildings grow over time to accommodate the family. So in a lot of ways, we've sort of spread this house out, made it look like it had been built over time, look to the houses of Chatham and to the existing houses, house and barns that were there, using similar pitched roofs, the ideas of what's called saddlebags, which are sort of side rooms off of the main form. But I think one of the things that makes this house really, I think, kind of really plays into a lot of what we see in Chatham is the house really isn't 2 stories. It's really a story and a half. And what I mean by that is, of course, we're really tucking that second level into the roof. So you don't have a full height wall on the exterior generally. Light, air, and mass is gained by building out dormers that pop up, or incorporating space into the gable ends of the building. So with that, I just really wanted to say that, there are certain other challenges that we have because, of course, we have to provide flood vents, as in accordance with all state and local regulations. So it was important that we had all the mechanicals above that floodplain. Obviously, that precludes any basement. The idea of tucking those rooms, we're actually below the necessary 30-foot height by a few inches. We really tuck those second floor rooms up into the attic story, and so we don't have any attic either. So, there's that stuff, as we all have, that we put in our basements and in our attics that we need to somehow accommodate in here. And that's why, we have the garage structure, and we have 3 bays in the garage structure. In essence, one of those is obviously to deal with the things that we typically would put in our basement and whatnot, such as lawn furniture and all the rest of it on the off season. So I think that's sort of, and let me also say that, we're going to be using, of course, the natural materials, as you could imagine, that a house like this would want to have, cedar shingles that'll gray with the weather, window colors that are complementary to that type of architecture. So I think that kind of summarizes our approach to this. Again, because of that flood level, we're forced to put all the mechanicals also up into the first story of the house. And so that takes some square footage as well. I'm delighted to take any questions you may have.
Okay, Mr. Riley? Mr. Riley? I think Mr. Riley has disappeared.
I'm here.
Oh, good. All right.
Yeah, you're lucky. I can't get my camera to turn on, so, but I do have the microphone.
Okay,
So I just want to say, Dave Clark is also in the meeting, if you have any questions regarding the engineering. So I guess the points, that Clay has made, I think are legitimate. I think it's important, to understand the neighborhood where this house is being built. As you know, and justly so, the board is concerned with, the visual impact of changing structures they would have on the neighborhood. And so I want to point out a couple of things. When you're driving down Shell Drive to get to the property, because of the mature trees on the property and on adjacent properties, the only portion of the existing structure that's visible is the main section of the antique house. I don't know if any of you were there today or recently. I certainly observed that. And as I was driving down Shell Drive, I couldn't help but notice the three rather large, imposing structures newly constructed on my left hand. I took a couple of pictures today. Sarah's got them up there. That's one. Move to the next one, Sarah. And then the third one. So you can see these folks weren't all that concerned with keeping the height of the building down and tucking things into the second floor roof. These are all large, imposing structures, and they're located on lots that received hundreds of cubic yards of fill to raise them up to make sure they had a good view, which is understandable. And so this is the neighborhood. So I think that I'd like to have you consider the fact that what Joe and Clay have put together is a rambling design. If you want to put the design back up, Sarah, that as Clay says, it's additive to some degree, and so it's kind of low and rambling. I mean, the maximum height, the ground level there is 5.7 feet. We begin our measurement from the top of the landscape material we end up putting against the foundation, which is 7.7 feet. So the height of the ridge above the ground level is 32 feet. And, considering the fact that the house is, on a property that's in a bowl, so that all the properties around it look right over it, or will look right over it, I think is, a very important consideration. I wanted to address the driveway for a minute. You've received correspondence from Jay Briggs, our building commissioner, regarding the ability of a property owner to bring fill onto the site. And in general, as you know, fill is prohibited. However, there is a section that allows a driveway by special permit to be constructed, in a manner as determined by the Conservation Commission and you, the members, to be practical. So Dave Clark, our engineer, suggested that in the main, the driveway would be above the floodplain elevation of 11. So the maximum height of it is 11.6 by the front door. So that means that in addition to the property owners and their guests being able to turn around without difficulty, if a safety vehicle or somebody who's lost drives down Shell Drive, instead of doing a backing and filling and to try to get around, they can simply turn around and as designed by David. And I think it's really important to point out that the section of the bylaw that gives you the authority to opine or determine whether or not it's allowable also requires that the Conservation Commission render their opinion. And I'm not certain whether you're all aware of it or not, but the Conservation Commission has issued an order of conditions for this design, including the proposed driveway. So I think that's, I believe that should be a very important consideration. So, you know, when we talk about the criteria, the adequacy of the size of the site, well, if you're talking in terms of the buildable upland, you know, it would be about maybe 1,500 square feet as a footprint for the house. And that's unrealistic as to the size of the lot, the size of the existing structure, and of the availability and the screening that protect this lot from our neighbors. So I think you know, we believe the site's adequate for our proposal. Compatibility of the size of the proposed structure, well, you know, we are larger than even those rather imposing buildings up at the top of the hill. But you know, having in mind the chairman's concerns down on Little Beach Road, where one of the structures was elevated somewhat unnaturally above the ground down there. Here we are the lowest point in the neighborhood, and so not only are we surrounded by hills all around us, but also by substantial trees. And so while our building is larger, it's generally not visible, and they've done what they can to maintain a low profile. The extent of the proposed increase in non-conforming nature, well, that would principally be the increase in the living area on this lot, which is non-conforming because it's in the floodplain. We don't think, again, that there's any harm there because because of the size of the lot, 120,000 square feet, and the fact that you know, the property simply isn't visible from the neighboring properties. You know, suitability of the site, including but not limited to impact on, you know, neighboring properties, natural environment, including slopes, vegetation, wetlands, water bodies, and stormwater runoff. As we said before, we are the low point in the neighborhood. So we're not running off onto anybody. In fact, it's more likely that there'll be stormwater runoff entering our property from those properties. And the And that's another reason why we've designed the driveway so it's above the floodplain. Because we're the lowest site in the neighborhood, and because we're in a bowl, if there is a flood that overtops the berms on the east and north sides that have been approved by the Conservation Commission, the flood waters are going to basically sit there until they're absorbed by the ground, which could be several days or a week or longer. So that's another reason why we felt it was important to elevate the Shell Drive in our driveway so it's above the floodplain, so that even if floodwaters do inundate the property, the owners of the property will be able to come and go and be serviced by emergency vehicles. Excuse me. So, then we come to the fifth criteria, which I think we all agree is generally the most significant one for your consideration, which is the impact of scale, siding, and mass on neighborhood visual character, including views, vistas, and streetscapes. And again, I would point out the fact that this property, this building, will only a very small portion of it will be visible. Sarah, I took a picture, I think, that shows that. Gotta keep, yeah, there you go. All right, so that's from up at the top of Shell Drive. That's what you can see of the existing structure. And the proposed structure, I might need Dave Clark for this. I believe our ridge is going to be no higher than that ridge. Well, I take it back. It is. Our ridge is going to be at 41 feet. Existing ridge is 30 feet. So our ridge will be 10 feet higher than that ridge. But again, you only get to see a very small portion of the structure. And then I drove down, I turned around and took pictures looking back up the hill. So that's standing by the front door of the portion of the building we were just looking at. And that's the only structure you can see. I did take a second picture, and you can see very barely through the trees right there. There is another house there. But this is how secluded this property is, and why we're going to have virtually no impact on the neighborhood visual character. Certainly not impacting anybody's views, vistas, or streetscape. I did take a picture from the water, looking out at the water. I know we're worried about kayakers and their views. And so to see that much of the water, I'm a little guy, so I stood up on the bench there that you can see in the foreground and held my camera as high as I could, which is not very high because I'm short. But that's all you can see, and vice versa. That's what they'll be looking at. That section of the property that we're looking at right there is actually going to be somewhat higher under the plans approved by the Conservation Commission. If you look at the site plan, the current elevation is 10, and it's going to go up over 11, up to 11. And then we have Blue Flags Design did a plan that's going to put substantial plantings along that. Not trees, because we don't want to block the view either way, but there will be planting. So in terms of the real visual from the water, it will be higher than is currently shown there. Compatibility of the proposed use. It's a single-family house, and all the other rather large homes in the neighborhood are single-family homes. We are putting in a new septic system, which would be an improvement over the existing system. And Dave Clark can address that if you want questions about that. We actually believe that there'll be an improvement of traffic flow and safety because with the driveway above the flood elevation, if there is a flood, both the owners of the property and any emergency vehicles would be able to continue to access the property despite the flood waters. That would be our presentation, Mr. Chairman. Happy to
Okay.
answer questions.
Okay, thank you. So we're gonna do it a little differently as far as the next stage. Usually, at this point, I ask the questions or statements, I should say, for those in favor, and then I read the correspondence, and then we have the folks on the other side. Well, what I'm gonna do is read all the correspondence. And then we'll open it up to any statements from folks in the audience. And when that's done, then we'll go into, and that could be either side of the coin, incidentally, of the statements from folks in the audience. And then we'll go into questions from the board. So if you'll bear with me, we have quite a bit of correspondence. And I shall begin. The first is a letter. It's from Dennis and Betsy Grimes, and they give their address as 21 Gilman Shore Road. That's in Belmont, New Hampshire. They write, this property was on our family since 1973, when Mr. Willard S. Levings bought it from Mr. Smith, who was a member of the Wentworth family. For the most part, we maintained it as an old historic home with very little change to it. We've watched many changes to Chatham over those 50 years and knew this place would also ultimately get changed. Mr. Giacalone bought this historic property from us this past July and has taken on a very large task in saving what is now reportedly considered to be the oldest house in Chatham. As you are aware, he would like to move and preserve the existing house in the new location on the property as a guest cottage and is asking to build a new home in the AE zone for his family. We commend him for doing this. He is under no obligation to save the original house and could instead be demolishing the oldest house in Chatham. The town of Chatham would then lose yet another piece of its history. I watched the recent planning board meeting, that was December 15th, whose purpose was to make a recommendation to the ZBA for the Giacalone's proposed driveway. I have concerns with the reasons for their objection. There's no doubt that it is larger than the existing one, but it's needed for additional parking and emergency vehicle turnaround access. It is also used as a footpath for the 6 other Shell Drive / Widow Road houses that have deeded access to the beach. I heard many of the board members complaining about bringing in fill for the driveway and that it was not being designed to allow water to run beneath it. The property is technically in the FEMA AE zone. However, it has not flooded since 1991, the perfect storm 29 years ago. When it did flood then, the water only came in from the northern beach side of the property. There is now an Army Corps of Engineers approved berm / levee in place, which protects the property from storm surges. Also, in 40 years of ownership, we never had any storm water come in from the marsh on the eastern side of the property. By the time the marsh fills up, the tide is already retreating out. This property is well protected from the effects of storm surges, and the need to allow water to run underneath the new proposed driveway seems totally unnecessary. Despite it being labeled in the AE zone, I conclude that with global warming, it could flood someday far into the future. But if and when it does, this property will not be alone. Tens of thousands of other homes along Cape Cod and other U.S. coastlines will also flood. Having a driveway on 68 Shell Drive that allows water to flow under it won't make the situation any better. Another thing that bothers me is the inequitable treatment with abutting properties. I feel that the planning board members concerned over the proposed driveway of 68 are disproportionately critical for a request that will have no effect on the adjacent properties, yet other far more invasive plans have been permitted. Example one, although the requested new driveway design proposal must get a recommendation from the planning board, please compare the effect of a raised driveway at 68 Shell that doesn't allow water in 100-year storms to flow beneath it, with the real physical damage that has occurred as a result of the 3 homes that were allowed to be built up the hill on Widow Road. This driveway is feeling all the effects of that construction and will for a long time. Mr. Russell, the developer, essentially cut the entire 3-lot subdivision, and after one of the houses was built, installed a crushed shell footpath straight down the hill to Shell Drive. The consequence of those actions has turned Shell Drive into a massive drainage ditch for the surface rainwater runoff on all of those properties. Whether or not it was their specific responsibility, I believe the planning board should have realized what effect the massive changes upland of a sensitive flood zone below it would have had. If it was truly watching out for the environment, it should have requested a stormwater mitigation plan. To date, no Chatham boards have done anything to address the stormwater runoff, and as far as I know, have no plans to do so. Isn't there a quote-unquote reasonable use standard in Massachusetts that states a landowner cannot unreasonably cause surface water to flood his neighbor's property? Example 2, please look at the abutters at 284 Kendrick Road. They are in a FEMA VE zone and have a driveway that passes through the marsh on the eastern side of 68 Shell Drive property. Starting around 2015, they have been allowed to raise that driveway above tidal levels and have no planning board requirement that allow water to pass beneath it. In 2018 through 2020, they were given permission to raise the house up to 17 feet on a special foundation, build a new septic system with 4-foot exposed walls, and bring in town water and natural gas. They were also allowed to bring in 1,800 cubic yards of fill and build a new living space above a shed/garage. Any other town would have considered that to have been a change of use in the restricted zone. Considering how often that area is flooded with reoccurring nor'easters, I am sure a good portion of this fill will get washed into the marsh or Pleasant Bay over the next 2 years. Circling back to the planning board's vote to deny Mr. Giacaloni's proposed driveway in order to meet FEMA regulations in a AE zone, his proposed new house and garage will be elevated 11 feet. That will require that they also elevate the driveway and then grade to slope the landscaping around it. Allowing fill for both an improved driveway and landscaping of the new house will have no effect on water drainage for this or any other abutting property, and should also be looked at as a safety improvement. Denying fill for the driveway only to satisfy a bylaw would mean steep drop-offs in the landscaping where a person or animal could get hurt. I hope that the Chatham ZBA and planning board members will take all of these thoughts and points into consideration when reviewing this plan. At some point, it has to be accepted that Chatham is changing and people want to build new homes in place of old ones. Anyone that is willing to preserve the old while asking for the new should be looked at favorably and not be handcuffed for asking for some reasonable variances. I would hope that both neighbors in the town of Chatham would accept this and understand that if a new house can be built, the oldest one in town can be saved. Thank you for your time giving us your consideration. Again, that was Dennis and Betsy Grimes. Next, we have a letter. This is from Frank Messina, who's the chairman of the Chatham Historical Commission. And he writes on December 14th, in January 2019, the Chatham Historical Commission imposed on this subject property a demolition delay for 18 months, the maximum it can impose on a property that is determined by the commission to be, quote unquote, historically significant and worthy of saving. The CHC was strongly convinced by the research completed at that point that this could be, quote, Chatham's earliest documented survivor from the late 17th and early 18th century with possible connections to the Willard Nickerson family. This has been further confirmed by research completed by our preservation consultant Eric Dre and by archaeologist Craig Chartier in a report entitled Architecture Reconnaissance Survey prepared for the Nickerson Family Association. The commission subsequently requested from the Massachusetts Historic Commission that they prepare a quote unquote opinion of eligibility for the National Register, end quote, for 68 Shell Drive and provide additional information as was requested. After submission and review of the additional information, the MHC found that the subject property, Nickerson House does meet National Register criteria A and C and is eligible for listing in the National Register of Historic Places. A few, quote, first period colonial era homes, end quote, those built from 1650 to 1720, remain in Chatham, but none in this pristine condition, nor with ties to Chatham's founding family, William Nickerson and his son, William II. There's no question in our opinion that this structure deserves to be saved and to be kept on or near its historic setting in North Chatham near the original colonial era family homestead. We understand that all very historic structures or homes cannot be treated as a museum. We need to allow the quote unquote adaptive reuse of these historic structures while maintaining enough of the original architectural details and historic materials to be saved for future generations. The applicant, Joe Giacalone, has committed to the restoration of the exterior of the home, the historic home, windows, doors, etc., and also remove the non-historic additions and dormer. With this permission, we will complete a dendrochronology examination, which is the science of dating of the original material, to validate the dates of original construction. He is further committed to donating the historic 1800 barn on the property to the Nye Family Museum in Sandwich. All of these actions are consistent with historic preservation practices, which could allow the iconic home to remain in the historic colonial farming / homestead location on the shores of Pleasant Bay. Chatham has lost too many structures that define our historic heritage. We have a chance to stem that tide by allowing the structure to have an adaptive reuse and be allowed to stand. Historic Old Commission encourages the town of Chatham ZBA and the other boards and commissions to find a way to save this historic home. And again, that was from Frank Messina, the chairman, and all the other members of the Chatham Historical Commission. Then we have a letter. This is from Paul Glickman. It's dated February 8th of this year. It's written to Attorney Riley. I write to you because I have been informed that you were counsel for Chatham LLC and the Planned Development Project. I represent the Cannon Hill Association and the Cannon Hill Road District, owners of the private roads named Widow Road, Bellamy Lane, and Andrew Mitchell. Members of the association and district have been informed that your client intends to utilize my client's private roads in connection with the construction of the planned 68 Shell Drive development. Please note and inform your client that my clients deny your client the use of their private roads without the prior written authorization of my clients. Any such prohibited use may be subject to your client to approve appropriate legal remedy, including seeking injunctive and monetary relief. The association and district understand that the only access to Shell Drive is via the use of these private roads. My clients are prepared to provide your client with time and condition limited access to their roads to meet their reasonable needs for use consistent with my client's interests under the following conditions. Given the proposed scope of 68 Shell Drive project and the anticipated extensive heavy vehicle use for backfilling the land and the resulting construction, the Cannon Hill Road District will require a $100,000 bond acceptable to my clients to cover any road repairs and maintenance necessary, both during the construction period and for a period of 24 months following the completion of the project. My clients also requires that your client agree to such schedule and conditions as my clients believe necessary for construction vehicles and other vehicles to access the roads to protect their interests and property rights. Such an agreement must take into account the needs of the community to protect and assure the enjoyment of their property for themselves, their children, visitors, and assure the protection of pedestrians, walkers, bikers, joggers that use these roads extensively. The agreement must also assure that the present condition of the roads will not be degraded and that the association and district will not be adversely affected by your clients or your agents' use of the roads and land surrounding the roads. Please note that my client's goal is to assure that the members of the association and road district rights concerning use and access to the roads are protected. They hope and expect that we can achieve a solution to this matter. Please get back to me at your convenience to notify the owners of 68 Shell Drive if you are not planning to represent them in this matter.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah,
the, Mr. Glickman no longer represents the association. They're now represented by John Kanega, who's an attorney in Orleans. And their concerns have principally been alleviated by reduction in the amount of fill proposed.
well, we'll find that out later on.
Sure.
Okay, so then we move on to a letter. This is from Nicole Smith. She is the town of Chatham's conservation agent. She writes on June 22nd, 68 Shell Drive was continued to July 7th for us to draft and approve an order of conditions. The permit will be issued within a week of the 7th. From what I believe, the abutters' questions have been answered, and they are confident that any possible flooding issues on their properties have been resolved. Then we have a memo, Town of Chatham Board of Health. Judith Giorgio writes on 6/21. I've reviewed the plan to demo and rebuild and relocate portions of this dwelling. The plan will add 3 bedrooms to the property for a total of 9. This is allowed in accordance with the Board of Health nitrogen loading regulation, allowing for 1 bedroom per 10,000 square feet of lot area. A new septic system will be required as shown on the proposed site plan. The system will be elevated to comply with the BOH regulations per siting a septic system in a flood zone. The finished grade over the system must be more than 1 foot above the flood elevation for this area. And then we have a letter. This is from the town of Chatham Planning Board. It's from Catherine Halperin, the Planning Board Chair. She writes on December 15th. The Planning Board at their December 14th meeting reviewed the ZBA request for comment. After review of the request, the Planning Board voted 6-0-0 to send a negative recommendation for the above referenced request for comment. This had to do about the construction and maintenance of a driveway or roadway in the Conservancy District of minimum legal and practical width where no alternative means of access from an established way is available. The plans as submitted show a significant increase in driveway size from 3,491 square feet to 7,700 square feet. In addition, it seems to me that's more like the size of the dwellings. Well, anyway, in addition, the use of fill, again, as indicated on the plans, is expressly prohibited in the Conservation District. Pursuant to section 4.A of the Protective Zoning Bylaw, the Planning Board also requested to note that at the time of the meeting, the board had not yet been able to review additional significant information referenced by the applicant's representative. In addition, the quote-unquote flooding analysis drafted by the Woods Hole Group, as this information was not included with the materials provided to the Planning Board. Then we have a letter. This is from Cannon Hill Association. It's written, it's not signed by anybody, but it is from the Cannon Hill Association, written on June 22nd. We are writing a follow-up to the letter sent on February 8th by Attorney Glickman. Mr. Glickman was representing Cannon Hill Association, Cannon Hill Road District at the time. Since the time of the February letter, we have learned that there is a reduction in fill being proposed because the plans for 68 Shell Drive have been revised to conform to Conservation Board hearing decisions. We also understand there are proposed mitigation plans which, if carried out, will remove invasive plants and substitute hundreds of native plantings. These actions will support conservation efforts and support the ecosystem in the long run. We have been in touch with Mr. Giacalone, who's the owner of 68 Shell Drive. We understand his willingness to work with Cannon Hill Association and our road district, and to be a part of the neighborhood long term. We look forward to working with Mr. Giacalone in a collaborative way as his plans proceed. Then on March 4th, we received the following letter. It's from Sharon Dunn Gordon, and that address is 59 Andrew Mitchell Lane. I'm writing as a resident and member of Cannon Hill Association regarding the proposed development project at 68. The plan for 68 Shell Drive is significantly raise up the land with fill within the floodplain along the beach of Bassing Harbor. The project impacts a large number of families living in Cannon Hill and on Shell Drive, which is part of Cannon Hill Road District. Transporting this overwhelming quantity of fill raises many concerns which we want to identify for the ZBA and Conservation Commission. One, the fill which is planned represents months of dump trucks traveling through our neighborhood, causing damage to our roads and adjacent land. We suspect that the damage will not be immediately evident, but will cause deterioration over time. These are private roads maintained by dues paid by members of the road district. These roads are not constructed or intended to accommodate the weight and wear of repetitive use by heavy equipment. Two, the trash and construction debris attendant with such a project will contaminate the ocean and litter the neighborhood and the beach. A plan for containment must be in place by the developer and monitored appropriately. Three, construction vehicles are oversized for the width of our roads and intersections. Respect for reduced speed limits is essential to ensure the safety of our families, our children at play, and elders out walking in the neighborhood. Four, the noise level of truck traffic and heavy equipment is very disruptive to our usually quiet neighborhood and should be restricted to appropriate days of the week and times of day. Previous experience with construction in our neighborhood has taught us that these are very, very real problems and that it is reasonable to limit the impact of this construction project on our neighborhood. We request that the developer address these issues, and we intend to have a voice at the ZBA and Conservation Commission meetings in order to raise awareness. Thank you for your attention to our concerns. Then we have a letter. This is from David J. Shorten, Shorten, PhD, Executive Director of the Nye Museum, which is located in East Sandwich. And I'm not too sure of the date on this, but probably was in December. I write in support of Joe Giacalone. Last summer, Mr. Giacalone offered to donate the historic barn located at 68 Shell Drive in Chatham to the Nye Museum. The suggestion came through David Wheelock, a historical archaeologist who has worked for both parties. Mr. Wheelock was aware of the Nye Museum's vision statement to expand its historic preservation efforts and suggested that Benjamin Nye Homestead at 85 Old Country Road in East Sandwich is a new destination for the barn. Mr. Wheelock subsequently investigated the condition of the barn, submitted a report to me recommending acquisition. I then drafted and submitted a barn acquisition plan to the Board of Trustees of the Nye Family of America Association, which oversees the museum and the Benjamin Nye Homestead. The plan involved dismantling the barn in early winter 2020, storing it, rebuilding it at the Benjamin Nye Homestead, and restoring it over the next 3 to 5 years. On September 25th, the board voted unanimously to approve the plan and thus accept the donation of the barn. Since then, the Nye Museum staff and trustees have worked closely with Mr. Giacalone as well as Protect Our Past, another organization dedicated to preserving the buildings at 68 Shell Drive, to execute the barn's transfer. I have great respect for Mr. Giacalone's commitment to doing everything he can to protect all of the buildings on his property. I am also especially confident because I know that Mr. Wheelock, who has been working with Mr. Giacalone and with whom I respect greatly, feels the same way. The Nye Museum remains committed to acquiring and preserving the barn. Staff and trustees realize that this will be a long process, and we remain patient and respectful of all aspects of that process. Then we have an email. This is from Jenny Nickerson. Her address is 30 Bittersweet Lane in North Chatham. She wrote on December 17th, I would like to give my support to this application and the owner's appeal to move and renovate the existing structure, though thought to be the oldest house in Chatham, owned by William Nickerson Jr. At the same time, generally speaking, I'm concerned about the number of variances that have been granted and continue to be that allow property owners to enlarge homes or build new structures that often maximize the area of the lot. I believe we are wasting our resources and losing the charm of our town, the very reason so many people come to live here. Our protective bylaws were written and voted on for a reason. I would encourage the CBA to abide by these restrictions. I think Ms. Nickerson, Ms. Nickerson is confused about the number of variances we've granted. Then we have an email. This is from Karen Salinaro. Karen Salinaro, who on Thursday, December 17th, emailed Hello, I'm one of the three members of the OBJKL LLC, which owns Whittle Lot 53, which abuts 68 Shell Drive. I provided the information that I found on the website about the 68 project to our attorney and engineer for their review. I will be attending the hearing. We have a concern about the massing of the structure, and as a result, are wondering if the ZBA can request that story poles for the planned structures be installed. That would enable a better understanding of the massing and the location of the proposed subject. Then we have an email from Susanna Nickerson, who writes on December 17th, I would like to see this, the oldest house in Chatham, preserved and protected. If this means that the house has to be moved to a different spot on the owner's property in order to protect it from being demolished, then I support the house being moved. And Susanna's address is 606 Main Street. Then we have another note. This again is from Dennis Grimes. I read his letter earlier. And he wrote on December 16th to Mr. Giacalone. As I said earlier, I asked Betsy to clean up and organize my thoughts in my original draft letter of support. And so here is her version of the letter, which is always more professional. I will also join your ZBA meeting. So that must have been the cover letter for the letter I read earlier. Then we have an email. This is from Scott Barry, B-A-R-R-Y. He wrote on December 16th, I've been following the articles in the Cape Cod Chronicle regarding the Home 68 Shell. I've been vacationing in Chatham for the last 32 years. I think the new owners should be applauded for taking on the project. Moving and restoring an old home is not cheap, as I have personally done that myself when I lived in New Hampshire. I have read the challenges with the site being in the floodplain. My opinion is there needs to be concessions made, and hopefully the board can look at this project and hopefully not be so black and white of what it is/isn't allowed. Every project deserves to be looked at individually. I also do not fault him for building a new home and benefit from modern progression and comforts. This sounds like a rare situation where everybody gets what they want. I look forward to following his story. Then we have another email. This is from David Dubuquet, maybe, D-U-B-U-Q-U-E. He wrote on December 16th, I'm writing this letter as a full-throated endorsement for Joe Giacalone, a submission for the building plans at 68. I was a listing agent on 68 Shell Drive and had numerous interactions with Mr. Giacalone regarding the purchase and subsequent plans to build and also save the existing 1700 structure, which is the oldest house in Chatham. In every one of my dealings with Joe, he has been always put the highest priority in terms of saving the historic structure and balancing his desire for a beautiful home on that site, which is so richly deserved. My experience as a realtor is that many, many homes that have either been rebuilt from the ground up or have had major rehabilitation can only add value to the town and continue its fine tradition of balancing the old world versus the new. Having evaluated Joe's plan, I believe this is consistent with the type of project that have been undertaken in the town while preserving its most storied asset, which is the 1700 Nickerson home. In closing, you will not find a better family or a more responsible caretaker that Howard Brown than Mr. Joe Giacalone and his family. Thank you for evaluating my letter and look forward to the board's decision. Then we have an email from Susan Wilson. He writes on December 14th, I'm emailing you today in the hopes that we can save and restore the significant historic farmhouse. I feel strongly that Chatham is in jeopardy of losing its historic homes. This one is important. Chatham's character is changing fast, and we need to slow down the erosion of uniqueness and its charm. Then we have another email. This is from Stuart Green. He writes from 31 Hallett, Chatham, on December 14th. By way of introduction, I am one, a homeowner in the old village. Two, have a sincere belief in the value of saving, restoring, and protecting historic homes. Three, have plowed a lot of energy and time into protect our past, a Chatham nonprofit whose mission it is to save historic properties. And four, I'm very active with the Chatham Historical Society, a nonprofit which seeks to inform and educate present and future generations about the history and culture of Chatham and the vicinity. I would like to add my voice to the call for saving and restoring 68, one of the oldest historic homes in Chatham, with a legacy extending back to the son of the founder of Chatham. The ZBA can surely play an important part in this effort, and help us both A, retain the character of the town, and B, maintain respect for structures that contribute to our place and time. Okay, then we have another email. This is from Caroline Lane. She writes on December 14th, as a resident of North Chatham and a member of the creative team at Protect Our Past, I would like to add my name to the list of those asking you to support the proposal to save and restore this important piece of Chatham history. Then we have a letter. This is from Ellen Briggs, and she is the founder and president of Protect Our Past. She wrote on December 13th, as you know, Protect Our Past is concerned for the welfare of historic house located at PHL. The advisory board of this nonprofit would like to add their names to the list of those asking you to support the proposal to save and restore this important piece of Chatham's history. The POP advisory board members are the following: Anna Carlson, Carol Colucci, Maura Cook, Bobby Garside, Susanna Nickerson, Maria Nye, and Maureen Boku. Thank you for caring. Then we received another letter, same lady, Ellen Briggs, founder and president of POP. She wrote on December 11th, POPs is concerned with the welfare and historic homes and barns located on 68 Shell. Built in 1700 for the Nickerson family, the house at the end of Shell Drive is arguably the oldest home in Chatham. It has withstood evolving climate and lifestyle shifts over 300 plus year life. The board of directors of Protect Our Past wants this essential piece of Chatham's history to be saved and restored as close to its original state as possible. We are asking you, Chatham ZBA, to be thoughtful in your decision to ensure this will happen. Then I have several letters from our building commissioner, Jay Briggs. I'll read the first two, and then the third. The first two were written on June 10th. And Jay writes, I've reviewed the ZBA application for the above reference address and have a concern with respect to the proposed fill on this project. Fill is not allowed in the Conservancy District under section 4.A.4 of the protective bylaw. Section 4B4D allows for the use of quote unquote landscape materials only up to 2 feet in depth, tapering to natural grade within 10 feet of a foundation. The fill under the driveway and to the east of the dwelling are not allowed other than that necessary for the construction of the septic system leaching field. The existing grade of the proposed dwelling appears to vary from elevation 6.0 to 8.0, which is 3 to 5 feet below the base flood elevation of the AE11 special flood hazard area. The revised site plan dated 5/20/21 indicates that the proposed grades at the foundation will range from 6.8 to 12. This is not attainable under the bylaw, as only landscape materials are allowed around the foundation. Building height structures located in the Conservancy District shall be measured from the lowest adjacent grade, that's the lag, next to the building as identified on the elevation certificate rather than the grade plane. The current site plan is calculating building height using grade plane, which does not apply to this scenario. Then on June 10th, Jay also wrote, building height by definition from section 2 of the Chatham Protective Bylaw, quote, means the vertical distance measured from the grade plane to the highest point of a structure or roof surface. Height limitations shall not apply to television antennas, chimneys, spires, cupolas, or extensions of structures normally carried above roof lines and which are strictly ornamental in nature. However, in section 4.A, Conservancy Districts 3B, last sentence states, quote, no dwelling shall exceed 30 feet in height as measured from the lowest adjacent grade determination by the elevation certificate. Therefore, it is my interpretation all structures located partially within a Conservancy District shall have building height determined by the lowest adjacent grade rather than the grade plane. This will provide a more accurate and more easily determined baseline elevation from which to base building height. Then on June 23rd, Jay Briggs writes, he's writing this to Mr. Riley. I feel this is worded a little better than the previous email. Structures located in the Conservancy District shall use lowest adjacent grade as taken from the required elevation certificate rather than the grade plane as a basis for determining building height. The LAG would include any landscape materials used. Please feel free to vote, which was done. That's how we end up. Okay, and that takes care of the correspondence we have. So I now will open up the meeting to folks calling in on Teams. And I request that they be individuals that we haven't heard from, or if I already read your letter, that anything you have to say is not redundant and is something original. So, and it doesn't make a difference whether in favor of this or against it. I'll have Sarah recognize you one by one, and we'll go from there. So indicate in the screen now if you wish to speak.
I see Mr. Messina is on the line and he would like to speak. For anyone else, if you can use the raise hand feature up at the top of your screen, that way I can keep track of everyone. Thank you.
Okay, Frank, I read your letter, but I discussed this with you earlier, and you said you had something, I guess, original to say, and so the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I don't know if I'd use the term original, but you deserve kudos for reading those letters. God bless you.
I get paid extra for that, Frank.
Yeah, paid extra for that. Okay. I just want to comment that, historic preservation is not for the faint of heart. And I'm thinking about the Coast Guard boathouse, which I started getting involved in about 15 years ago with Dave Doherty. And 15 years later, it looks like we may be able to save it. And I was involved in with numerous developers who were interested in this 68 Shell Drive with various schemes and to develop the property. And, and most of them, could not go anywhere because they were trying to do nothing but tear down the historic house and build a number of houses on that property. But then came along Mr. Jack Leone and got to know him. Maybe I got to know him well because I could pronounce his name. But he had a real interest in the property, and not just the property, but the house and the history of the house. He was very helpful in allowing the Nickerson Family Association, to crawl over that house and to take a look at it. And I know Joe Nickerson looked at the house and he said, geez, I've been to a lot of Nickerson homes, on a scale of 1 to 10, this is a 15 in terms of how well the house has been preserved. And as I said in my letter, there are a number of first period houses in Chatham, but none this authentic in terms of its restoration. The Mass Historical Commission has agreed with our analysis that was done by our preservation consultant, Eric Dre, and also Craig Cartier, the archaeologist who did the dig at the Nickerson Family Association, where they found the original Nickerson home. And so we have a very high level of confidence that this is, in fact, William Nickerson Jr.'s home. There's a term, dendrochronology, which I know you had a hard time saying it.
Yeah,
so do I. And we hope to do that very soon with the assistance of Mr. Chick Leone, which to age the property. It's a process in which very simply they take a core and they match the wood rings to specific property, which they know for certain, of high certainty, is of a certain age. So we hope very shortly to have a real date of the house, 17 something or pre 1700. The Nye family has also agreed to take one of the historic bonds, but interesting enough, the Nickerson Family Association, who originally wanted to take the house, but unfortunately they couldn't because of trying to fit it onto their property and also the cost involved. But we may be able to keep the barn, which is also dates back to the early 1800s in Chatham. So anyway, long story short, I think my letter spoke for itself, and hopefully, we can find a way to maintain this home in Chatham. And the term we use is adaptive reuse, which means, every historic property can't be a museum, but the fact that Joe and his wife and family want to keep it as some kind of a guest cottage, I think is wonderful if we can do it. Again, thank you very much for your patience, and we appreciate anything you can do for it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Frank. I've been pronouncing his name Joe Giacalone because that's the name he uses in all of the ads I've been listening to over the years for his business in Greater Boston. In fact, I just heard one yesterday in my way to Boston. So I don't know if Joe, if you're there, which way would you like us to pronounce your name?
Hello, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, you have it correct. Joe Giacalone.
Okay, that's what I thought. I've always enjoyed your ads, incidentally. They're very, very well done. And I listen when I'm on BZ or the Red Sox or whatnot. So welcome to our meeting. Okay, so back to those who wish to speak. Sarah, who do you see in the crowd that might want to speak?
Ellen Briggs has her hand raised.
Okay, Ellen, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for recognizing me. I appreciate it. I just wanted to, and thank you for reading the letters that we sent earlier. FYI, Protect Our Past is participating with Joe, Giacalone. I'll get it right one day. In funding the process of the dendrochronology, which will give us a more affirmative date of its age. We're all interested in doing it. And the reason why Pop is particularly interested is because we are producing a film about this house yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So we really want to know the age of the house for that reason as well. And I just want to encourage you to make this all work out because it's a wonderful example of how an historic house can be reused. Frank talks about adaptive reuse, and it's just we have done that with the mill, and it's just exciting to see what Joe and his family are doing with this house to keep it as close to its integrity as possible and keep it alive. So thanks so much for addressing this, and we Protect Our Past is really behind having this happen. So, and thank you, Joe, for your patience. Oh my gosh, this has been a long, long process. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. Okay, Sarah, anybody else out there wish to speak?
I'm not seeing anyone with their hand raised at the moment, but there are several letter writers that are on Teams with us today. So I don't know if any of them wish to speak.
Mm-hmm. Well, if no one's raising their hand, then I think I'll go on to the next portion of the meeting.
Okay.
All right. So I think at this point I should. Well, Mr. Riley, did you want to talk about any of the letters that were written, or shall we just go on and have questions from the board?
Well, aside from agreeing with most of them, no, but I think that in addition to questions, I'd love to know if any of the members have concerns.
Yeah, okay. Well, we'll do that too. All right, so we'll go to questions from the board. And all right, so let's start. And what we're going to do is we'll do the questions from the board, and then we'll go through the same and raise any concerns any of us might have about this project. So let's have questions first. We'll start with Dave Veach.
Thanks, Dave. At this point, I don't have any questions. Something may come up with other questions, but at this point, I feel like I have a pretty good understanding of it all. Thanks.
Okay, and I should have added that Jay Briggs is with us in this meeting. So if you have anybody has any questions, regarding his 3 letters. Jay is with us. Okay, Paul?
Yes, this is Paul Semple. I guess I would ask Bill Riley whether he had an opportunity to go back to the planning board to address their concern with respect to the driveway. I think this is the first time I've seen a response from the planning board, which was a 600 negative response.
Well, Paul, we did not go back there. The discussion that occurred, this was a long time ago, was not, what I would say, really addressed directly, the issues of this property. In other words, the at that time, we were proposing a significantly greater amount of fill, and it seemed to me that the principal impetus for the negative votes was really unrelated to the driveway, and was really focused more on the fact of the redevelopment of the property. And so we thought that the Conservation Commission's approval of the project in its current form was sufficient guidance for the members of the ZBA.
Well, the letter from Catherine Halpern from the planning board seemed to address the criteria that are in the ordinance with respect to minimum driveway construction, and was saying that in fact the driveway construction was substantially larger than what existed prior to that time, and more than was necessary. Is that not correct?
I guess because I was present, virtually at that meeting, the fact that the decision addressed the criteria, I can tell you the discussion among the members had very little to do with the criteria.
Okay. We've had some input from Jay Briggs with respect to fill and how to determine grade plane and lowest adjacent grade and so forth. Does any of that impact what you're proposing?
No. Jay's on the line and he can speak for himself, but Jay had sent the letter regarding fill generally in the Conservancy District. And when I got that letter, the most recent one in June, I sent him an email that referenced a section in the Conservancy District portion of the bylaw that talks about construction of driveways. And he and I spoke subsequently, and it's my opinion, which Jay shares, I'm happy to say, that the issues regarding the driveway as to width and height and method of construction and all that are really for the members of the Zoning Board of Appeals to decide, with the guidance I would suggest from the Conservation Commission, who has approved this plan. And I think one of the things that the Conservation Commission was clearly aware of, and I don't know if the members of the planning board were, the fact that this property is in a bowl. And so, the fact that the driveway would, a portion of the driveway would be above the floodplain doesn't interrupt the flow of the water, because it doesn't flow anywhere. it's going to go into this property, presumably at some date in the future, given sea level rise. And it's not going to flow anywhere else. And so Conservation Commission, for that reason, felt comfortable approving the plan as presented, as this, the current plan, not the earlier plan. So we believe that, I think you have sufficient evidence from the Conservation Commission that what we're proposing for driveways, given their height and width and method of construction, is practical and reasonable, and would ask it to be approved.
And you think that the construction proposed satisfies the planning board concern, and I guess our concern, that the driveway meet the standard of minimum legal and practical width?
Well, I believe so. I mean, Dave Clark is on the line. He can talk about the width. We felt it was important to provide a turnaround, not only for the property owner, but for emergency vehicles. Once an emergency vehicle starts down Shell Drive, and we're not the only house on Shell Drive, there's no place to turn around until you come to our property. And so right now, it's flat and level, and people can drive on the lawn and turn around without any difficulty. But when you're going to have an elevated house and the prospect of floodwaters in the future, we relied on Dave Clark, who's also on the line, to design the turnaround. And Dave has told me, and you can certainly discuss it with him, that he designed the turnaround so that a fire engine could negotiate that without any difficulty.
Okay. In discussing the criteria under section 5B, you did not go to number 12, which deals with dwellings located in the floodplain. This is located in the floodplain, isn't it?
Yes, and it's funny. I use a form, and my form doesn't have 12 the 12th criteria on it. So
right, the newer criteria, I guess. But that deals with the extent of the lateral expansion. Is one of the criteria that we're tasked to look at. How do you feel about the extent of lateral expansion here?
Well, that section in the bylaw was added. One of the rare intelligent changes during Deanna Roofer's time as our director of community development, because they'd written the bylaw so that there could be no vertical expansion of a structure. And so we pointed out that given the fact that the houses had to be elevated, that it would be reasonable to allow some horizontal expansion. And and I've been involved in several applications. I know the ones down on Little Beach, including the one that was approved, did provide for some lateral expansion. So, it's a determination to be made, by the members. I think, I think the criteria have to be considered, as any law would be, in a coherent manner, with all sections being construed harmoniously, as the Supreme Court often says. So, but in terms of the lateral expansion, there's no limit on it. The fact that the building's elevated means that there's no, well, hopefully, there's no risk of flood damage to the structure. And so I think that we're not blocking anybody's view, which would be another concern for lateral expansion. I know that was a concern down at Little Beach when we were dealing with that property. So and with no standard established in the bylaw itself, I think it comes down to the nature of the property on which the expansion is proposed. And here, of course, we have, by Chatham standards, a very large building site. And as I indicated at the opening of my statement, we're only covering 6% of the lot. So again, I believe that the amount of lateral expansion proposed, given the nature of the lot and the fact that we're being constructed in accordance with FEMA, is reasonable.
Okay, I don't think I have any further questions.
Okay, questions from Dave Thompson.
I really don't have any at this time, Mr. Nixon.
Okay. Buck, questions?
Same as David. I have no questions.
Dennis?
I just have a couple. Picking up what Paul has said about the driveway, I was concerned about that too. I mean, it's pretty obvious that the planning board gave an opinion on a driveway that now really doesn't exist compared to what's before us. So I'll just leave it. I mean, it might be nice to hear from the planning board as to what do they think of the driveway as currently laid out. But I'm more concerned with Jay. And I guess what I'd like to ask is, if we approve this in accordance with the plans and everything that we've been hearing about, are you in a position to offer to issue a building permit?
Hi, Dennis. Yes. There's no question the construction and maintenance of a driveway is allowed by special permit in the bylaw. It doesn't list fill necessary to do that. I think that would be up to the discretion of the ZBA. If a special permit is issued based on the plans in front of you, then I would accept that towards the issuance of a building permit.
Okay, that's really all I have. Thank you.
Questions, Megan?
I don't have any questions right this second.
Okay, Bill?
Yeah, I think in line with what Paul was bringing up, but also looking back at the criteria, the biggest one to me is number one, the adequacy of the site, of the size of the site. In relation to the ordinance. So is there a way of maybe the engineer can identify on the site plan the, the 8,455 square feet that's considered quote unquote buildable?
Dave Clark.
I am here.
Okay, so go ahead, Dave.
So the buildable upland, this is an unusual situation, is the house is not even in the buildable upland. The buildable upland, there's two sections of buildable upland. There's one towards the water to the left.
The hand is there.
And then there's another section to the right, along the right property line.
There you go, right there.
Because those two areas are not contiguous, we only counted the left side as the buildable upland of the lot, being 8,000 square feet.
So the existing house, the proposed house, the location of the relocated portion of the saved home, none of those are within the buildable upland.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, I also had the same concern that Dennis brought up and Paul about the driveway. I think we've pretty much discussed that, but have you perked that septic area in next to where the building is being relocated? Just out of
Have not
curiosity.
yet.
You have not.
No, but there was a septic upgrade done there in the last 20 years, and I looked at those soil test results, and there's adequate soils. We will be required to do additional test holes when the time comes to permit the septic system.
Right. That was more of curiosity. That's all I had for now, Dave. Thanks.
Okay. Okay, so now we'll go through and list for Mr. Riley or anybody the concerns you might or might not have and of this project. So let's start with Dave Veach again. So it's a very different question than what we had before.
Yes, it is. Well, I'm very much in favor of the saving of the old portion of the house, and that we've gotten a lot of feedback on that, and I agree with all of those writers. However, I have a number of concerns with this proposal, and I've had some time to look around and look at some things that, no decision that we make sets a precedent, et cetera. But just looking around town and things that we've approved in the Conservancy District or not approved in the Conservancy District, et cetera, et cetera. I honestly can't find anything that's asking as much of us zoning wise as this proposal. It really stands out. So some of the aspects of it that I have some difficulty with, and relative to Jay's letter and concerns expressed by some of the other members, and I'm sure they'll fill in later, but the fill, they're continuing to propose fill under the driveway. They had initially come to us seeking a variance to allow a great deal more fill, which is expressly prohibited in the zone. And I would say we in agreement that they withdrew that request for the variance that they were seeking. They were looking to get it, seeking to get it perhaps called landscape material rather than fill, but fill was fill, what they were proposing. So when I'm looking at the sections on the driveway in the bylaw, zoning bylaw on construction maintenance of a driveway and the criteria for that we've got the negative recommendation from the planning board on, and that's not even half a page above the prohibited use. The first prohibited use is no person shall fill, place, or dump any loam, soil, pan, sand, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to say that those things are connected, and I don't believe that the intent of those things was to say that you can fill under a driveway, but you can't fill it for any other purposes. Now, my understanding is they will be able to place fill in order to meet the septic requirements, and I think that's a reasonable and fair. I don't see that there's truly a need to expand this driveway so much or provide the fill to bring it up to the level it's needed to be. The garage in the floodplain does not have to be up at the level that I think even this garage is proposed. I don't believe. So I don't think that they necessarily need to have the garage or the driveway at the levels that's proposed. The lateral expansion, there's a huge amount of lateral expansion proposed here. I don't know what to think of that. I mean, I certainly and can grant them some consideration, especially for the saving of the old house. You know, represents about 1,250 square feet of footprint. But they're proposing to add from the existing 3,630, almost 3,700 square feet. They're proposing to raise that to 7,600 square feet. They want to add 3,000 square feet in addition to what's already there. And I don't see. We're in the Conservancy District. It is a difficult site, that's for sure. I'm not sure that the site is adequate for the proposal. For criteria number one, I really, I'm wrestling with that. The size of the proposed structure with neighboring properties. I know Bill showed us some photos of buildings up the hill, but they're not in the floodplain. And I don't think, and I did some research looking at the assessor's records and things. And honestly, I don't see, this would be by far the largest anything in the neighborhood, far and away. I don't know. I like the design of the house they're proposing it, but unfortunately, it looks like my entire neighborhood. And putting it on one lot, I'm not sure that that's the right thing. But I hope there's a way that we can, this site can be developed more appropriately and save the old house. But I think that this is asking too much. Thanks.
Okay, Paul, your concerns.
Well, as you could probably tell from my questions, I do have some concerns from the zoning viewpoint. I agree that it's an important structure to try and preserve, and a lot of the input that we've received directs itself to that concern. But we have additional concerns that we have to look at in terms of what we're attempting to do here. And what struck me the most is that this is really a large construction project, a large home. And as Mr. Riley indicated, larger even than the things that you see coming into the property on Shell Drive, up above Shell Drive, which themselves seem huge. So I have real concern about whether that is what is intended in a conservation zone where if there was not a pre-existing house, you couldn't build anything. So you have a situation where the concept of the extent of lateral expansion, which is being proposed, while it may have been originally intended to deal with the fact that you were elevating in areas like Little Beach and elsewhere to provide some relief, to allow some expansion, I don't think anyone contemplated doubling the size of construction to a 7,000 to 8,000 square foot agenda. So I have real concerns from that viewpoint, given the criteria for the adequacy of the size of the site and for the extent of the lateral expansion being proposed. So those would be my concerns going forward.
Okay, Dave Thompson, your concerns.
Thank you, Mr. Nixon. Comparing Little Beach to this Shell Drive is not apples to oranges. This is unbelievable. I think that the property owner is asking too much of us. It's too large to go from 3697 to 7635 square feet, or 90% of the buildable land, where 15% is the maximum, is really asking too much, way too much. I'm not in favor of this, Mr. Nixon.
Okay. Buck, your concerns.
First of all, Mr. Chair, I've made arrangements to delay my departure, if that's acceptable, to stay to the end of this. But as far as concerns, I've read that bylaw more times than I want to admit. And when I go to the prohibited uses in the Conservancy District on page 28, 4A, and the first thing they say that's prohibited is no fill, any soil, loam, peat, sand, gravel, rock, with the exception of the landscape material. That's pretty, in my opinion, that's pretty strong language saying they don't want any fill in the Conservancy District. I would understand that for the septic system, that pretty much gets a free pass, but I don't see the rest of it. And when I read and I've read the letters from the building inspector, and I've heard the unanimous decision from the planning board, 600 negative. Those are two big things to overcome, and I don't think I can agree with ignoring those statements. I do understand that the oldest house in town is very, very important and dear to so many people. Unfortunately, I have to focus on the bylaw, and I don't see how we can get around it. Not to mention the size issue of the home, but the no fill is pretty much black and white to me. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Dennis, your concerns?
Yeah, I had same concerns with what's being issued here. The lateral expansion. I mean, it's a beautiful design, but unfortunately it's the wrong lot for this design. And I think I know we don't have precedence, but issuing our approval of this, I think, would come back to haunt us. So if I were voting, those would be my concerns.
Okay. Megan, your concerns?
My concerns are very much in line with what everyone else has said. I think that the property is just not good for this size project in the floodplain. I agree with Paul. Yeah, it's not. I would not vote for it if I were voting.
Bill?
Yeah, I mean, I would echo what everyone else is saying for sure, especially, you know, as it relates to the size of the home. I do give the applicant tremendous credit for what he's put forward to try to save that historic portion of the home. The design of the home is beautiful. I actually like the way it is designed, but it is just simply the wrong place for it. And I think we'd be really stretching it to approve something like this. And if I were voting, I would have some extremely strong concerns about approving it.
Okay. And my concerns, I agree 100% with Paul. I'm sorry, Dave Veach, when he was talking about the driveway. And, that letter we received from the person who used to live there for 30 years and all that they never had flooding that came up to the driveway. It was just in one particular area. I don't think any fill at all should be used for that driveway. And I truly mean zero. Secondly, most everybody's talked about the size of the house. When I look at what's there now, I look at the 2,114 foot dwelling. The barn and the shed, which is included, I know, in building coverage, really doesn't relate to what we're talking about. So if you take that 2,114 number and you compare it with the 7,635 number, this thing is going to be 3.5 times larger than the existing dwelling. And to me, that's way over the top. So I think, Mr. Riley, you've heard our concerns.
Can I address a couple of the concerns?
Yeah, of course.
Well, particularly with regard to the comments made about the fill for the driveway. You know, you would think that we would have learned that if we're not going to tear down the houses that are capable of being flooded, that we have to do things that make them habitable. And the concerns about fill that have no effect whatsoever on the conservation issues in the town, as noted by the fact that the Conservation Commission had no objection to the fill. I think, you know, ignoring the sea level rise and the risk that properties have in the future by saying, oh, wait a minute, we can build a driveway, but I don't want to put any fill there. Well, how do you think you build a driveway? You have to put fill in for a driveway. I mean, presumably the language that allows that driveway would let you build a driveway through a salt marsh. Presumably, if the Conservation Commission said it was all right. And so to say that no fill whatsoever for a driveway, I think is ignoring, the consequences of climate change, whether they're man-made or natural. Sea level rise is going to continue. All these properties, Little Beach, this property, are all going to be, under attack someday. And it's only fair for the Conservation Commission, and they've already acted, I think, in an enlightened way here, as well as the Zoning Board of Appeals, to consider preserving the value of the properties here by allowing the people to have a driveway that can be utilized with this unique property, with it's in a bowl, no matter what kind of weather we have. And so, I can't quarrel with your concerns about lateral expansion. I think that the difficulty we have here that is that you've never dealt with a lot that had 120,000 square feet in it. And so that's why you've never seen a house proposed this big, because you've never had a lot this big. And so I understand the concerns, and I'll certainly address them with my client. But I really hope that the members who expressed the fact that they couldn't support any fill whatsoever for the driveway will reconsider their position, because we talk about elevating form over substance in the law, and I think that's one of the things that's going on here. Oh, fill is prohibited, so that means you can't have a driveway. Well, next door at Kendrick Road, they raised a driveway there, and somehow it didn't come up on the radar screen of the zoning board when that was approved, but that driveway's been elevated. And so, in this, and it was approved by the Conservation Commission. Why did they approve it? Because it does no harm. And that's why, you should reconsider your opinion and allow this driveway to be constructed. Well, obviously there'll be changes if we're going to make the building smaller, but to bring in adequate fill so that we have a driveway that's above the floodplain, not only for the property owners, but for safety vehicles as well. Anyway, so on the other issues, obviously I'll have to sit down with my client and see how they want to proceed. As I say, I think just ask the members to think of two things. One is the fact that, yes, you've never seen a building like this, but you've also never seen a lot like this. And also reconsider the question of fill for the driveway. Somebody's got their hand up.
Well, that's all right. So, Mr. Riley, would you like to make some sort of a motion?
Before you do, this is Clay Smook, the architect. I can't find the hand button. I was wondering if I could ask a question, please.
I'll allow you to ask one question. Go ahead.
Yeah, Clay's
Okay.
gonna do Clay would have to do the redesign. That's why it's, go ahead, Clay.
Yeah, that's really what I just wanted to touch upon. I'm hearing what the members of the board are saying. I just want to, perhaps you could give me a little guidance in terms of, so that I could discuss it with the client, what you would see as an adequate reduction. What would be the threshold, as opposed to me just sort of designing and hoping I'm getting to where you'd like to be? Do we have any sense of what that might be?
Yeah, I think that'd be a very difficult question for us to answer, because each one feels a little differently about what sizes and what it isn't. We're not architects like yourself. I think it's you looking at the project and saying, okay, if we make it smaller, how am I going to make it look just as good? You know, and not worry about a specific number. Like if we threw a number at you, like it can't be more than say 5,000. Well, that's misleading you, because it's speaking to what we're looking at. And I know I'm not answering your question, but I don't think we're in a situation where we could give you that kind of guidance right now.
Okay, I just thought I would put it
Also,
out there.
you know, it's not your job to design the project. It's our job.
That's right. Okay.
All right.
So, Mr. Riley.
I would suggest 1 month, the second meeting in July.
Well, I don't know how we're looking for that. Sarah?
As of right now, we have an executive session on that day starting at 3:30, then 6 applications on that agenda already.
But they're all easy ones, Sarah, aren't they?
I don't think so. I wish they were easy, Mr. Riley. All right, Sarah, how are we looking for August?
August 12th, as of right now, I only have 3 applications on that agenda.
Okay, how about August 12th, Mr. Riley?
That's certainly acceptable.
Okay, all right. So if you would specifically request a continuance to that day, please.
Yeah, so on behalf of Chatham LLC, I'd request a continuance to August 12th.
Okay, Paul, a motion?
This is Paul Semple. I'll move to grant the requested continuance to August
12th.
August 12th.
Dave Veach seconds.
Okay, we need to vote on that. Dave Veach?
Veach votes yes.
Paul?
Semple votes yes.
Dave Thompson?
Dave Thompson votes yes.
And Bucky, you still with us, or have you gone?
I'm still here and I vote yes.
Okay, and I vote yes. That's a unanimous vote. So are you done with us today, Buck? It's exactly 5:59.
You did an excellent job, Mr. Chair. I'm leaving now.
Okay.
Good luck on your other 4 applications.
All right, and good luck to you. Okay, so Dennis, you're voting from here on everything else. Okay, let's go on, Sarah, to 21045, please.
Application number 21-045, Jonathan and Shelley Sequin, owners of property located at 149 Countryside Drive, also shown on the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 6I, Block 13, Lot N12. The applicant seeks a dimensional variance under Section 8D2C from the requirements of Appendix 2 to allow for the construction of a 100-square-foot garden shed within the 50-foot setback to the Coastal Conservancy District. The lot contains 24,725 square feet in an R60 zoning district. A dimensional variance is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 10, and Section 8D2C of the Chatham Protective Bylaw.
Okay, so we either have, I think, Shelley, are you presenting this, or Jonathan?
John's here. I'm John.
Great. Well, hi, John.
And Shelley's here too.
I'm here too.
All right, very good, very good. Okay, so floor is yours.
All right, on a lighter note, my name's John Sequin. My wife Shelley and I live year-round at 149 Countryside Drive, and we are proposing to place a 10 by 10 shed within the 50-foot Coastal Conservancy District. You guys were out last week, you spoke with Shelley, and as you noticed, the majority of the house is within the 50-foot mark, and placement of the shed alongside the garage is really the only location that's both logically and aesthetically important, and that's really the only place that works on the property. So the shed, it is under 100 square feet, or 100 square feet and under, so we meet the required setbacks. The Board of Health saw no impact on the septic system, and the important thing is Conservation did approve the project. So once the shed is placed, it's just going to be a prefab Pine Harbor shed. And if they can get the lumber and the materials to build the thing, it'll be placed on site and mostly be used for storage. Just basically things that are in the garage right now will be moved into the shed, and then I'll be able to park in the garage again. So that's basically it. Thanks for your time. I welcome any questions or comments.
Well, the variance criteria, you've talked about, I guess, the first one, soil condition, shape, or topography of the land. The second thing is a literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance or bylaw will involve a substantial hardship, financial or otherwise. Could you talk about, if you didn't have the shed, what the hardship would be to you?
Well, basically, we live here year-round. We have 3 kids. We have a garage full of projects and other things going on. Our oldest daughter moved out, on her own. Fortunately, her stuff did not. So basically, we just need a little extra storage. I don't know if it's considered a hardship or not. We think it is, but it's a 10 by 10 shed. We're not looking to make any dramatic changes to the neighborhood or anything like that. So.
Okay. Okay. So, very good. So I'll ask if there's anybody in the audience who wishes to speak in favor of this. If so, please indicate on the screen so that Sarah can recognize you.
I see no one that wishes to speak in favor of this application.
Okay, so I'll read the correspondence. The first is dated 6/21. Judith Giorgio, the health agent for the town of Chatham, writes, I've reviewed the plan to construct the shed. The location of the shed will not encroach on the existing septic system. I have no concerns. And then Nicole Smith, our conservation agent, writes on June 7th. He says, I guess that's the applicants, received an administrative review permit for the shed. That's the total amount of correspondence. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak against this, or is a specific question?
I see no one in the audience that wishes to speak in opposition or has a specific question.
Okay, good. Then questions from the board. Dave Thompson, do you have any questions?
No, I don't. I don't have any questions at all, Mr. Nixon.
Okay, Dennis.
Yeah, have you ever considered putting the shed closer to the street?
We went through many different variations of where to place the shed, and we can move it forward a couple feet, but once you move it forward more than that, the air condenser is right there. The turnaround to get in and out of the property is right there. And then further up is a nice Japanese maple, and further up from that, we start going uphill pretty dramatically, and there's the vent for the septic system. And anywhere else on the property, we're either getting closer to the bank or further away from the house, and it doesn't make any sense. It would be more disturbing to place it other places on the lot.
Yeah, unfortunately, I have no further questions.
Okay, Megan, do you have any questions?
I do not have any questions.
Bill?
No questions.
Dave Veach?
Well, I'm sorry, I'm just a little confused, David. So this requires a variance because it's being suggested to be placed in the conservancy I'm not sure. I mean, I know we're seeking a variance, but I'm not clear why why that is.
Well, it's within the 50-foot setback of the Coastal Conservancy District. Yes, so it's a
Okay.
new nonconformity, and that's what's going on.
Within that, okay. All right. Okay, thanks. I don't have any other questions, Dave.
So we do meet the building requirements for setbacks. We have to be 9 feet from the property line.
Yeah.
So as far as the building permit, I
Yeah.
think we're okay.
Okay, Paul, do you have any questions?
No, I have no questions.
Okay, I don't either. So a motion, please, Paul.
Yes, this is Paul Semple. I'll move to close the hearing and move into deliberations.
Dave each seconds.
Okay, we need to vote on that. Dave Veach?
Each votes yes.
Paul?
Apple votes yes.
Dave Thompson?
Dave Thompson, yes.
Dennis?
Sullivan votes yes.
And I vote yes. Okay, deliberations, let's start with Megan.
I do not have too much to say, except that I think that having to not park in your garage is kind of a hardship. So
Thank you.
I am not voting for this, but if I were, I would vote yes.
Bill?
Yeah, you can see that the options are clearly limited, and and while I know it is inside of the Coastal Conservancy setback area, putting it anywhere else outside of it on this property, I wouldn't do. So I think I would be inclined to vote for it if I were voting.
Dave Veach?
Yeah, excuse me, I can find that, it makes sense to me. I can find that this meets the criteria for a variance, and I will support it.
Paul?
Well, unfortunately, we keep getting these variance requests on situations which, when you look at it, you think, "Gee, this is ridiculous." But, we just turned down a variance request over 1.5 feet with respect to a pier, an elevated catwalk going out. And I don't see that this particular property is unique from its neighbors. And I don't really see the hardship criteria that are required for a variance. So much as I would like to go along with this concept, I just don't think I can do it on this situation.
Dave Thompson?
It's the logical place to put it on the lot. And I'm going to vote in favor of it.
Dennis?
Well, as I said before, I mean, we didn't write the variance law. We're just asked to enforce it. And I think people have to understand how difficult it is to get a variance in Massachusetts. And I mean, if this were a special permit, it would be, be 100 to nothing. It'd be a no-brainer, but it's the variance. And like Paul said, it just doesn't qualify. So, I mean, as much as I hate to do it, I would have to vote against it.
Okay, so John and Shelley, you've heard that 2 members will be voting against it, and that would mean you would lose. So I would suggest to you that you request to withdraw your request without prejudice.
I request to withdraw without prejudice.
Okay. Paul, would you make a motion, please?
This is Paul Semple. I'll move to grant the requested withdrawal without prejudice.
Dave each seconds.
Okay, we need to vote on that. Dave Veach?
Veach votes yes.
Paul?
Apple votes yes.
Dave Thompson?
Dave Thompson votes yes.
Dennis?
Sullivan votes yes.
And I vote yes. Thank you both very much. Okay, Sarah, 21-047.
Application number 21-047, Kathleen Zortman and James Higgins Jr., care of William G. Litchfield Esquire, 330 Orleans Road, North Chatham, Mass. 02650. Owners of property located 11 Watch Hill Way, also shown in the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 17C, Block 39, Lot C1. The applicant proposes to install an exterior mechanical system appliance generator 10 feet from the northerly abutter where a 25-foot setback is required. The proposed generator will be located next to the existing AC condensers, which are located 15 feet from the northerly abutter. The lot contains 11,000 square feet in an R40 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 6, and Section 5B, or Section 8D2B of the Chatham Protective Bylaw.
Okay, Mr. Litchfield. Are you out there, Mr. Litchfield?
He was with us, but
he
I'm
was-
not seeing him on the participant list anymore.
Well, it's kind of late for him, but yeah, I thought he was with us. Well, let's hope he returns, okay? So why don't you read, well, I don't know. It's very unlike him to be amongst the missing.
Let's see here.
You have his phone number?
Oh, he looks like he just called in. Okay.
I just called in for curious reasons. I apologize. My computer went down just as Sarah was starting to read. I apologize for that.
All right. Well, anyway, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will be brief because you've already had a relatively long afternoon. I represent Kathleen Zortman and Jim Higgins, who are seeking to put a generator at the rear of their house on 11 Watch Hill Way. From having gone out there, you saw that it is one of the most isolated places I've ever seen in a relatively congested part of the community. There are 2 air conditioning condensers back there, and I'll be happy to go through the criteria, or we're seeking a special permit. The site is adequate for the generator located adjacent to the AC units. It's within the lot line setback, but the lot line is the 33-foot wide Quasin Way on the north side, and we have no rights on that. So in fact, the nearest property, let alone the nearest house, is some 50 feet away. There's no issue with the compatibility of size, no change in coverage or mass. As to extent of increase in nonconformity, it is only a few feet in order further away from the house than are the existing compressors, only to meet code and safety requirements. Obviously, again, from having been out there, you know, it's at the rear of the house, behind the fence, behind a hedge, so there's a minimal change in nonconformity. No natural environment issues as to scale, sighting, views, and vistas. Plainly can't be seen from a public or private way or by any abutters. It's in a completely hidden location, again, behind a fence and a tall row of privacy trees, so there's no impact on views and vistas. The issue, as you know, is whether, well, there's one other noise in the letter. The existing air conditioning units actually will run far more frequently than the generator. I can recall a former member or late member of the board saying that when the request for generators, if you've got generators, you got problems more than noise if the generator is necessary. So the issue is whether the installation of one additional exterior mechanical appliance system, a generator, would be substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood. And I think in this case, you can find that it will not be at all detrimental, given its location and proximity to the existing compressors in a location which is both fenced and shielded. Be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak in favor of this application? If so, please indicate on the screen now so that Sarah can recognize you.
I don't see anyone that wishes to speak in favor of this application.
Okay, I'll read the correspondence, which consists of the following statement from Nicole Smith, our conservation agent. She writes, "No conservation approval needed." End of correspondence. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak either against this or has a specific question? If so, please indicate on the screen now so that Sarah can recognize you.
I see no one that wishes to speak in opposition or has a specific question.
Okay, very good. I'll just generally ask the board members, does anybody have a question? If so, speak up. Well, I think the silence speaks for itself. Okay, Paul, a motion, please.
Yeah, this is Paul Semple. I'll move to close the hearing and move into deliberations.
Dave Veach seconds.
Okay, we need to vote on that. Dave Veach.
Veach votes yes.
Paul.
Campbell votes yes.
Dave Thompson.
Dave Thompson votes yes.
Dennis.
Sullivan votes yes.
And I vote yes. Okay, deliberations. Let's start with Bill.
I have no questions or really anything else to add to this. If I were voting, I certainly would vote for it.
Okay, Dave Veach.
It meets all of our criteria. It's certainly not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood. I'll happily support it.
Paul.
I agree with Dave Veach.
Dave Thompson.
Dave Thompson, I'll go along with Paul.
Dennis.
I'll go along with David Thompson.
Megan.
I'll go along with Dennis.
Well, I'll go along with Megan. How's that? So there you go. Okay. So we need a motion, Paul.
This is Paul Semple. I'll move to approve the application as submitted.
Dave Veach seconds.
Okay. Voting, Dave Veach.
Veach votes yes.
Paul.
Campbell votes yes.
Dave Thompson.
Dave Thompson votes yes.
Dennis.
Sullivan votes yes.
And I vote yes. Thank you very much, Litchfield. That's a unanimous vote.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Sarah, 21-048.
Application number 21-048, James and Jennifer Mock, care of Michael D. Ford Esquire, P.O. Box 485, West Harwich, Mass. 02671. Owners of property located at 32 Old Salt Works Road, also shown on the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 13L, Block 1, Lot C32. The applicant seeks to enlarge, extend, or change a non-conforming dwelling on a non-conforming lot via the demolition of the existing dwelling and construction of a new dwelling, garage with living space above, and swimming pool. The existing dwelling is non-conforming and that it is located 25 feet from the Coastal Conservancy District. The existing non-conforming shed will remain unchanged. The proposed dwelling will be non-conforming and that it will be located 47 feet from the Coastal Conservancy District where a 50-foot setback is required. The proposed garage and swimming pool will comply with all bulk and dimensional requirements of the bylaw. The existing building coverage is 1,587 square feet, 3.9%, and the proposed building coverage is 3,323 square feet, 8%, where 10% is the maximum allowed. The lot is non-conforming in that it contains 60 feet of frontage where 150 feet is required. The lot contains 44,899 square feet in the R40 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 6, and Section 5B of the Chatham Protective Bylaw.
Okay, Mr. Ford, are you there?
I am, Mr. Chairman. And I know, as the previous speaker said, you've had a long afternoon. I think this is a fairly straightforward petition. I represent the Mocks, and I'm here with Polhemus of Polhemus Savory De Silva, builders designers, who will also speak to you about the proposed house. Let me just set the stage. We've got a lot which is conforming as to area, but non-conforming as to frontage. It has 60 feet of frontage where 150 is required. We have a house that sits in the Conservancy District presently, which makes it non-conforming. It's 25 feet from the edge of the Conservancy District currently. When we filed this proposal, we proposed to raise the existing house and build a new house farther back on the lot. But the new house, as Sarah read in the ad, was still to be 3 feet into the Conservancy District. It was to be 47 feet back from the top of the coastal bank. In all other respects, lot coverage, height, setbacks, the house and the pool house would conform. Since we filed an amended plan, Mr. Chairman, that now takes the house back out of the Conservancy District. We moved it an additional 3 feet after our first conservation, or in preparation for our first conservation hearing. The applicant wanted to do it themselves. So now we have a petition before you where the new proposed house meets the bylaw in all respects. The zoning bylaw meets the Conservancy District setback, meets all of the abutter setbacks, meets the building coverage at 8%, and meets height. So the only reason we're here at this point is because this lot has 60 feet of frontage, which it's had since it was laid out many, many, many years ago. But I don't think that's something that frankly really affects this petition, but it is something that triggers the need for a special permit. So we still need to make a presentation to you, and you still need to make a finding on the subsidiary findings, and then the ultimate finding that this will not be substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood. But I simply wanted to put the extent of the zoning relief in front of you.
Sure.
So with that, what I'd like to do is have Mr. Polimas just quickly run through the development proposal and the design so that the board has an opportunity to view that.
Okay, very good.
Hello, are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, Aaron Polhemus of Polhemus Saber de Silva Architects Builders. We will, as Mr. Ford said, try to keep this brief after your relatively long evening. So we have done a little presentation here, which I'll run through briefly. The first slide here just gives you an aerial sense of the neighborhood. I believe you all know the neighborhood relatively well. This neighborhood has been, essentially developed over the last, well, since the base was there. So all rather new development. You can see 32, which is a site in question. The site's being proposed to you this evening. One of the larger sites on the strip here. Go to the next slide, please, Sarah. This just shows the site from the water. Next slide, please. And here's another shot with one of the other adjacent homes in the neighborhood. Next slide, please. And then again, you can see the existing home with 2 flanking larger, newer homes. Next slide, please, Sarah. This slide shows the house rendered in. You can see a relatively modest house on a rather large site. And then next slide, please, Sarah. Here it is, just going down the way. It's actually hard to see the site. We're showing you this. There's a couple large trees that are being left on the site with this plan, so you can see how the house is actually really tucked back from the bank. We're pulling the house back pretty significantly, so it's really tucked back quite a ways, and the trees largely shield the house from the water view from coming down the channel here. Next slide, please, Sarah. Again, here you can see the existing, and then next slide. Again, the proposed, which is kind of hidden back because it's being pulled back quite significantly. Next slide, please. Just keep rolling down. This is the other end of the point. And then next slide, please. This shows kind of the other end. So we just showed the flanking points of the neighborhood to share with you all kind of how these homes in the neighborhood viewed from the water. This house is really will not be visible at all from the street. So really the only view you would see is from the water. So we wanted to give you a sense of that. And then next slide, please. Site plan here. Yeah, great. Thank you for zooming in. So you can kind of see ghosted in, if you will, to the landward or seaward line of the red line here, the seaward side of the red line here. You can see that ghosted in, if you will, existing home, which is, I can't really read it. There you go. Just yeah, a little bit up, Sarah, just right down over towards the bank, a little bit more back, sorry, but right on that red, there you go. So that's the existing home. The proposed home, you can see, is pulled back quite a ways. So we're pulling back, as Mr. Ford shared, actually beyond the conservation's 50-foot line to meet the zoning conservancy requirements. So the house is being pulled back, I believe, over 30 feet from what is currently existing. And then next slide, please. Just run through the elevations. This is the street side, if you will, or the driveway side. Next slide here, we have the east elevation, one of the sides, and then the next slide, this is the water side that we rendered for you, and then the next slide, the west. And then next slide, we do have a floor plan, as you can see. First floor, and then the next slide will be the second floor. Thank you, and then keep rolling from there, please, Sarah. Just the basement. And then we do have a garage right here. Go to the next slide. And the next slide. So this garage, does have a bit of finished space over top of it, but rather compact 2-car garage with some finished space over top. And then you can see a little changing area on the side, on the floor plan on the first floor, and then this is the second floor space of the garage. And then we just did a rendered. The renderings, I think, help a lot rather than just looking at the 2D elevation. So we just rendered in the design for you all, so you can see it. This is on the driveway side, so not visible, but wanted to share with you what the structure will really look like. And then next slide, just existing floor plan, and then back to the site plan. Oh, you can go back, Sarah. You just had these. If there are any, yeah, you can. Thank you. You can go back to the site plan if you would, please. Just we can leave it there.
Yeah, that would be
For
great.
Mr. Ford. Yeah, that'd be great. Excellent. And happy to answer any questions along the way as well.
Thank you. Mr. Ford,
Yeah, so Mr. Chairman, why don't I run through the criteria?
please do.
So adequacy of size of the site. As I indicated, the site is over 44,000 square feet. It's 44,899. The buildable area is over 40,000 square feet, 40,944. So it is a conforming lot from an area standpoint, non-conforming in that it has simply 60 feet of frontage. The proposed dwelling will now be located out of the Conservancy District. Meets all setbacks, side, rear, all abutter, obviously front yard, as does the accessory structure, which has the changing area for the pool as well as a garage and a room above. And then the two structures have a total building coverage of 3,300 square feet, which is 8% of the lot. 10% is allowed under the zoning bylaw. So I think you can make a finding that the site is adequate for the proposed project. Compatibility, the size of the proposed structure with neighboring properties. I think as Aaron took you along the water, which is where this is visible from, as opposed to Old Saltworks Road, where it's not visible from, as it's in the lot. It will be compatible. It will be a little smaller than some of those houses along the water. Some of them are quite large, but we think it fits in fairly nicely and is under the lot coverage requirements, and as I said, meets all dimensional requirements of the bylaw. Extent of the proposed increase in non-conforming nature. we eliminate all of the nonconformities of the present structure. I should mention, there is one other nonconformity on the site, Mr. Chairman. It's down near the beach. It's on the right-hand side of the lot. It's an old pillbox, a concrete structure. It is a remnant of the Naval Air Station that was there. This area of the property actually had a large blimp hangar on it, and that pillbox was accessory to that. Like many of the lots in this area, it has large sections of it that still has concrete underneath it, and we're working with the Conservation Commission and our order of conditions to remove all of that. I should have mentioned there is that one nonconformity with that pillbox, but it kind of straddles the lot line. Half of it's on the adjoining property owner and half of it's on our lot. We don't intend to do anything with it. In fact, we're putting some fiber rolls on the property with the permission of the Conservation Commission because there is some erosion there. The property owner to the east has a coastal engineering structure which butts up against the pillbox, and that actually is like a return, so it prevents erosion on that side. So I think both parties figure we might as well leave it right there. It adds stability to the bank. So nothing's happening to that. So there is no increase in any non-conforming nature on this lot. This proposal does not increase any non-conformity. Suitability of the site in terms of impact on neighboring properties and the natural environment, we think it fits in. We are before the Conservation Commission. You do have, after several iterations, I believe, an email from Ms. Smith that indicates that they do see an order of conditions being approved for this project. Our hearing has been continued to July when we will finish that up. Impact of scale, siting, and mass on the neighborhood visual character. We think this will not affect negative views or vistas, and we've tried to tuck it in, as Aaron showed you, on the site so that it's back from the water and kind of fits in with the other homes there. And we are saving the large trees that are down on the right, shoreward of the pillbox, so-called, that give it a lot of screening from the shore as well. The neighborhood's residential. It will continue to be residential. There will need to be a new septic system for this. It will need to be an IA system, and it is being worked on, and Coastal Engineering will be filing that from the Board of Health. So obviously that's a contingency of any approval. No noise and litter issue, and there are adequate utilities. With respect to the floodplain finding and criteria of lateral expansion, it's NA here because we moved it out of the floodplain. We got it out of the Conservancy District entirely. Happy to take questions, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak in favor of this application? If so, please indicate on the screen now so that Sarah can recognize you.
I do not see anyone that wishes to speak in favor of this application.
Okay, then I'll read the correspondence first. Is from Nicole Smith, conservation agent. She writes, 32 Old Salt Works was heard at yesterday's meeting and many questions were answered. We are waiting for land management documents, but I believe the project as presented will be approved with conditions and any changes would not be zoning related. Then we have a memo from Judith Giorgio, Board of Health. She writes on 6/21, I've reviewed the plan for construction of a new dwelling. The proposed dwelling will add sewage flow to the existing property above what is allowed by the Board of Health nitrogen loading regulation. This will require approval by the Board of Health for the installation of an alternate septic system in order to construct a 4-bedroom dwelling and a 1-bedroom guest house. Then we have a note from John Avery. John's address is 34 Old Salt Works. On June 21, he writes, thank you for sending us notice of the public hearing. As owners of the property at 34 Old Salt Works Road, we are writing to express our support of a special permit being issued to enable them to move forward with the construction of their new home. We have reviewed the plans of the proposed home, and we believe that it will fit nicely in our neighborhood while preserving the integrity of the shore front. We hope the zoning board of appeals will approve the requested special permit. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak either against this application or has a specific question? If so, please indicate now to Sarah on the screen.
I see no one that wishes to speak in opposition or has a specific question.
Okay, then we'll have questions from the board. We'll start with Dave Veach.
Dave Veach has no questions.
Paul.
Paul Sample has no questions.
Dave Thompson.
Dave Thompson has no questions.
Dennis.
Dennis Sullivan, I have no questions.
Megan.
Megan Story, I have no questions.
Bill.
Bill Grau, I have no questions.
Okay, motion from Paul.
This is Paul Semple. I'll move to close the hearing and move into deliberations.
Dave Veach seconds.
All right, need to vote on that. Dave Veach.
Veach votes yes.
Paul.
Sample votes yes.
Dave Thompson.
Yes.
Dennis.
Sullivan votes yes.
And I vote yes. Deliberations, Paul.
I think this project meets all of our criteria. It's certainly not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood, and I will be voting in favor.
Dave Thompson.
I agree with Paul, and I will be voting in favor.
Dennis.
Well, coming out of Riders Cove so many years, this lot certainly stood out like an eyesore. This little house on there and surrounded by beautiful houses, so it's going to be happy to see a nice house go in there.
Megan.
Well, I didn't mind the little house since I tend to be partial to them, but this is a beautiful project, fits all of our qualifications, and I would certainly vote for it if I were voting.
Bill.
Yep, I would agree with that as well. And I think the frontage issue is a non-factor at all. So if voting, I would certainly vote for it as well.
Dave Veach.
I concur with all previous.
And I agree. Okay. Paul, a motion.
This is Paul Semple. I'll move to approve the application as submitted. Let's deal with the question of conditions.
Yes.
It certainly seems as if it's large enough to accommodate any construction vehicles, and they're pretty much out of sight there. The only question I have is whether we need our normal construction activity and vehicles on site, and then the June 30th to Labor Day restrictions.
I would agree with that. Aaron, when do you plan to start work on this?
So I've committed in speaking with neighbors that we would not start until after Labor Day, which they were appreciative of.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm fine with a condition of not starting until after Labor Day, of this year, which will allow us to be, real closed in and in good shape by next summer. And I'm fine with keeping the construction vehicles on site. This is a very large site, one of the larger sites in the neighborhood. So I'm totally fine with keeping the vehicles in the drive and on site and not starting until after Labor Day.
Okay. Paul, then a motion, please.
Yep, this is Paul Semple. I'll move to approve the application as submitted with the conditions that all construction activity and vehicles be contained on site, that there be no construction prior to Labor Day of 2021, and that all construction will be between any construction between June 30th and Labor Day of 2022. There would be no exterior construction allowed, no work would be permitted on weekends, and construction activity would be between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. only.
Okay, very good.
8 seconds.
All right, and we'll vote on that. Dave Veach.
Veach votes yes.
Paul.
Sample votes yes.
Dave Thompson.
Dave Thompson, yes.
Dennis.
Sullivan votes yes.
And I vote yes. That's a unanimous vote. Thank you, both Aaron and Mike for it.
Thank you all.
Okay, Sarah, we got 21-049.
Application number 21-049, Edward and Cheryl Acton, care of Michael D. Ford Esquire, P.O. Box 485, West Harwich, Mass. 02671, owner of property located at 24 Salt Pond Road, also shown on the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 17J, Block 8, Lot 2. The applicant seeks to enlarge, extend, or change a non-conforming dwelling on a non-conforming lot via the demolition of the existing dwelling and sheds and the construction of a new dwelling, garage with living space above, and swimming pool. Also proposed is the installation of a new driveway and fence is allowed by special permit under section 4A3D. The existing dwelling is non-conforming and that it is located entirely within the Coastal Conservancy District, floodplain elevation VE19 and AE14. The proposed dwelling and swimming pool will be non-conforming and that they will be located within the Coastal Conservancy District where a 50-foot setback is required. The existing building coverage is 1,440 square feet, 43.2%, and the proposed building coverage is 2,671 square feet, 80.2%, where 15% is the maximum allowed. The lot is non-conforming in that it contains 38.2 feet of frontage where 150 feet is required, 3,330 square feet of buildable upland where 20,000 square feet is required, and 29,530 square feet of land area where 40,000 square feet is required in an R40 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Sections 6 and 9, and Sections 5B and 8D2B of the Chatham Protective Bylaw.
Mr. Ford.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I think the applicant, or at least Ed Acton, wanted to kind of start this presentation and introduce the project, and then I will be addressing the criteria.
Okay, very good.
You're on mute, Ed.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
This is Ed
There we
Acton.
go.
This is my
Acton. Welcome.
We own 24 Salt Pond in North Chatham, and after much thought and discussion, we've decided we'd like to, with your approval, tear down the existing home at 24 Salt Pond and build our new home that we believe will fit in nicely with the surrounding homes here on Minister's Point. I'll be brief. We were aided by many knowledgeable professionals during the process, some of which are here tonight to answer questions, as well as the helpful and patient people in the community development offices in town. Our existing home has has 4 small bedrooms. I believe it's charming, but the foundation's crumbling. It's not winterized, and currently we're only about 8 feet from Chatham Harbor. Chatham is our home. It'll continue to be our home. It's our primary home, and therefore we'd like to build a new year-round family home on the property. Our proposed home is a 4-bedroom, 2-story gambrel with a detached garage with some living space over the garage. Cheryl and I, mainly Cheryl, worked with the local architect, Tom Moore, and who's done quite a bit of work in Chatham. The concept is a classic New England Chatham gambrel, conscious of the material, scale, and fit with the neighborhood. It's going to have a red cedar roof, white cedar shingle siding that will both, weather to gray, proper shutters with pins and holdbacks, stone veneer on the foundation, window boxes, true divided light windows, much like a cottage style house. And it'll have a footprint of just slightly over 2,000 square feet, I think 2016. It's, we believe, very much in the character and scale of this neighborhood and what you would, generally see in Chatham. And I believe once the house weathers, it really should appear like a classic Chatham house. And I guess lastly, before Mike runs through the criteria, we want to let you know that we engaged our neighbors, early on in the project, and they've been very helpful and very supportive of the project. And I guess with that, I'll let Mike take over. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, so Mr. Nixon, Mike Ford, and Sean Riley from Coastal Engineering is also on the call, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
And Ed has obviously described the house to you from a design standpoint. This was a challenging project and a challenging lot. The lot has a series of development limitations, all of which we believe we've addressed. First, the house was old enough so that we needed to go to the Historic Commission and seek permission to demolish it. We worked with the Historic Commission, and they asked us to place a 6-month, or asked the Actons to place a 6-month delay on it to see if there wasn't somebody interested in taking it. Given where it is, and if you've been out to the site, logistically trying to get in there, the only way somebody could really come and move this is if they came in from the harbor and on a barge, maybe we're able to move the structure to another location. The Actons agreed to a 6-month delay. There were a number of people who were interested and came and looked, but frankly, it was a tall order to try and move this house off of this lot, and so there were no takers. But we've satisfied Historic after working with them. Secondly, we filed with the Conservation Commission. And as Ed told you, the existing house, a portion of it, is located in the velocity zone. They're now, of course, on Chatham Harbor, and they look out at what is referred to commonly now around here as the new cut, or the second cut, in the Barrier Beach that is across from them. There is a revetment on this site, and the revetment was built some time ago. And so Coastal Engineering was involved in helping the Actons try and site the house. And we worked with Conservation by going in preliminarily and doing an ANRAD, which allows the Conservation Commission to nail down all of the wetland resource areas and allow us to develop a building envelope, within which then Ed worked with Tom Moore to design the house. So there was a lot of planning in that. They took the extra step to do the ANRAD and get the development to the point where they had a building envelope and were able to do that. We've been to Conservation. Conservation is ready to approve the project. We worked hard to meet all of their requirements, but the first one was Conservation wanted to see everything out of the 0 to 50 zone, and so we're doing that. And the new house is built back out of the 0 to 50. It's still in the portion of the house in the AE zone. While the lot is quite generous in terms of being 30,000 square feet, in terms of actual buildable upland, as Sarah read in the ad, we're a little over 3,300 square feet. But what we've tried to do is to move the house back so that a portion of the house, the driveway, and the garage structure are located in that buildable upland portion of the lot, the 3,300 square feet that is indeed buildable. It's that blue line that kind of runs through the house. Could we put all of it in there? No, because we're back up against the front yard setback of 25 feet. We're 25.6 off of that line, so we pushed it up as far as we could within the buildable upland. A new septic system will also be built up in there. And so what we've done, while we're still in the Conservancy District, is that we've moved out of the V zone, and we have the house as far back as we can in the buildable upland portion and in the Conservancy District. So we think we've got a plan that you people can approve. Now, having listened to the first hearing today and heard a number of references to the Planning Board and the Conservancy District, I have to tell you, Mr. Chairman, I was surprised with the letter that the Planning Board at their meeting on Monday night is going to consider whether this driveway is an appropriate driveway in the Conservancy District. And I scratched my head because I called Sean Riley and I said, I don't believe the driveway's in the Conservancy District. And he said, it's not. It's at elevation 14. it's out of the Conservancy District. There's only one tiny little portion of a piece of the parking area that's down near the house that consists of about 20 square feet that's in the Conservancy District, but the driveway is not. So we didn't believe from the start that we needed to go to the planning board and get a recommendation, Mr. Chairman, but apparently they are holding a hearing, we were advised, on the 28th. I don't think you need to wait for that because, and I have Mr. Riley on the phone, this relocated driveway, first of all, there is a driveway in the Conservancy District already, but the relocated driveway, which we think is in a better location, is out of the Conservancy District. It is at elevation 14. So I don't think that's an issue and one you need to wait on. So you have a comment also from health. So I think I've covered historic, conservation, planning, and health. And now I'll get to the criteria.
Good.
Adequacy of size of the lot as it pertains to building coverage and setbacks. This new proposed dwelling will be still located in the Conservancy District, but out of the V zone and out of the 0 to 50 zone that the Conservation Commission wanted. We still need relief for being in the Conservancy District for a portion of the house and for the driveway and a fence. The new structures are conforming as to road and abutter setbacks. There are some existing sheds that are right up, one right up on the easterly property line, not easterly, I should say southerly property line, and another shed on the other side, which is non-conforming as to abutter setbacks. Those are being removed. So those non-conformities are gone. The proposal eliminates all three of those sheds. So we're in conformity with all setbacks with the exception of the Coastal Conservancy District. The new dwelling will be conforming as to building coverage if you use the area of the lot. It remains non-conforming as to building coverage if in fact you use only the buildable upland portion of the lot. So we think we've improved it because we've tried to locate some of the structure up into that buildable portion of the lot where the existing house is completely out of it. So we think that's an improvement. Accordingly, we'd say respectfully that the site's adequate for the proposal. Compatibility of the site with the proposed neighboring properties. Mr. Chairman, I know in my findings, I had a note that I was including a chart of the additional properties next to us to show we're compatible, and I forgot to send the chart. My apologies. But let me suggest to you that the two properties to the northeast, which are the Milton and the Foxman properties, they are 2,489 square feet in coverage, which is the Milton, and the Foxman property is 3,249 square feet. We're our proposed square footage is right around 2,800. So we think we fit with those to the northeast. The other one that was on my chart was Homes to the south, and their coverage is over 3,600, so it's a little larger. So we think that the Actons have designed their property to be compatible with those neighboring properties. I should add that all three of those houses that I just mentioned that I would suggest are compatible, you have a letter from each one of those neighbors in support of the project. Ed and Cheryl worked very closely with the neighbors at each stage, giving them plans each time they were before a committee. So we think we can meet that second criteria that it's compatible with the neighborhood. Extent of the proposed increase in the non-conforming nature. Frankly, we've eliminated the non-conformities of the abutter setbacks. We've made the non-conformity, I'd respectfully suggest, of being in the Conservancy District, which we continue to be in. We've improved it because we've moved the house out of the 0 to 50, out of the V zone, still in the AE zone, still in the Conservancy District, but in a much better location. So we think we've lessened the nonconformities that exist on the site. Suitability of the site, including but not limited to impact on neighboring properties in the natural environment. We don't think it's really going to have an impact on the neighboring properties. He's coordinated where the driveway entrance is with his neighbors. He's coordinated the plans and they're in favor. In terms of the natural environment, we anticipate, we've worked very hard, and we think, as the email from Nicole Smith says, we will be approved at conservation, and so we think we're meeting the natural environment. Impact of scale, siting, and mass on neighborhood visual character. There really isn't a view of this. It's pretty heavily treed from the street. There will be a view from Chatham Harbor, and that's why Ed wanted to take the time to describe in detail to you the building features that will comprise the house and how it will look from the water. Basically, we think it will fit in from the Chatham Harbor waterscape, if you will, as you look back at it. So that brings us to finding number 6. Compatibility of the proposed use with neighboring uses. It's residential, it will be compatible. Sewage disposal, he will be putting in a new Title V septic system. And I think in his last conversation with Judy Giorgio, it will be an AIA system in order to support the room over the top of the garage. That'll be the 5th bedroom. We don't think there's any impact on traffic flow and safety, and no adverse impact on noise or litter. The utilities are fine. There's no formula business, obviously. With respect to the floodplain, and that's why I asked Sean Riley to be on, and in terms of the lateral condition, we're moving it laterally out of the V zone and out of the area of the AE zone, but it still remains in the AE zone. It's a little larger house, but unlike the existing house, which is in the V zone, this new house will have flood vents, and the water will be able to flow. It will meet in all respects the floodplain requirements, where the existing house does not. Mr. Riley is on the phone if the board needs further discussion with respect to any lateral expansion, of which there is some in the AE zone, and an elimination of that exists in the V zone. So those are our findings, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak in favor of this application? If so, please indicate on the screen now so that Sarah can recognize you.
I see no one that wishes to speak in favor of this application.
Okay, so I'll read the correspondence. First, this is from Nicole Smith, conservation agent for the town. 24 Salt Pond, like I mentioned, was continued to July 14th, but the only issues the Conservation Commission had were in regard to land management. At the April 19th meeting, the commission stated that they believe the project could be permitted with conditions and pending the additional information that they had requested. Then Judith Giorgio writes on 6/22, I have reviewed the plan for construction of the new dwelling. The proposed dwelling will not add sewage flow to the existing property. I have discussed with the homeowner a deed restriction at the property, restricting the property to 4 bedrooms. The room over the garage will be limited to a game/bonus room only. The shower will be removed and will not be used or considered as a legal bedroom. I will require the deed restriction prior to signing off on the building permit.
Mr. Chairman, before you go on, I did speak to the health agent today, and she did wanted to note that also an IA system would be acceptable.
Okay, good, thank you. Then we have a note from Ali Sabatino, town planner, and she said on June 22nd, the planning board will review this request at their June 28th meeting, as Mr. Ford mentioned. That doesn't say why. Michelle Clark wrote to Sarah on June 8th, and this has to do with the Historic Commission. The applicant was before the Historical Commission on 10/20/2020 and 11/17/2020, proposing a full demolition of the subject structure. The Historical Commission determined that the structure is historically significant and therefore imposed a 6-month demolition delay. The demolition delay expired on 5/16/2021. Then here's a note from Tom and Mary Holmes, and as was just explained, they're just down a little bit at 26 Salt Pond Road. The Actons have shared their plans for the site with us. Mary and I strongly support the board approving them. We are the properties immediately west of the site. The Actons plan will be a nice improvement to the neighborhood. Now, Carol Foxman writes from 4 Ministers Lane. On June 4th, we have received the house plans from the Actons and completely approve of the plans and siting of the house, Norton and Carol Foxman. And then on June 4th, Ann Sampson wrote, I am one of the owners of 224 Scattery Road on Minister's Point. Ed Acton contacted us as he plans to build a home on the property. He recently purchased across the Salt Pond from us. He showed us his building plans in April. I understand that he goes before the zoning board this month. I have no objection to his proposal. And then we have a note from Gerald Milden at 2 Salt Pond Road. On June 4th, he writes, I'm the northern abutter. I have seen and I approve the Eaton's. How about Actons? Well, anyway, he's a little confused about your name. I approve the Eaton's finalized site and building plans. And that's the extent of that. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak against this application or has a specific question? If so, please indicate on the screen now so that Sarah can recognize you.
I see no one that wishes to speak in opposition or has a specific question.
Okay, fine. We'll have questions from the board. Dave Thompson.
Dave Thompson hasn't any questions.
Dennis?
I just have one. Can someone tell me what the comparison is between the present house building coverage and the proposed house building coverage?
Yes. I think it's on the plan, Dennis, if I can get the plan. It's on the zoning table. Sean put it right on there. Let me just get to it.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see that.
Mike, I've got it, Mike. This is Sean Riley, Coastal Engineering. The existing is 1,440 square feet.
Right.
And the proposed is 2,671, which includes the garage.
Yeah, that's what I meant. If you take the garage out, what's the comparison house to house?
I believe the garage is, let's see, 22 by, do some quick math for you.
I can do it. I got it on the top of my head. So the existing house is the 1440, and then the house is just over 2,000. I believe it's 2012.
Okay, so it's about 50% rather than the 100% that shows for the total project.
Yeah, it's like 600 square feet.
Yeah. Okay,
Just-
that's all I have. Thank you.
Megan, questions?
I don't have any questions right now, no.
Bill?
I have no questions.
Dave Veach?
Dave Beach has no questions.
Paul?
I have no questions.
Okay, a motion, Paul?
This is Paul Semple. I'll move to close the hearing and move into deliberations.
Dave Beach seconds.
All right, we need a vote. Dave Veach?
Beach votes yes.
Paul?
Semple votes yes.
Dave Thompson?
Dave Thompson, yes.
Dennis?
Sullivan, yes.
And I vote yes. Okay, let's start with Dennis on deliberations.
I think it's a nice project. I was a little concerned when I looked at the building coverage went from, almost 100, well, 80% versus 40% roughly. But I think it's nice. I think it'll fit in the neighborhood, meets all our criteria, and I plan to vote for it.
Megan?
I feel the same way. I was actually very concerned when I looked at the coverage when I went skulking around the lot by myself. Sorry about that if anybody saw me. It made a lot more sense. So if I were voting, I would vote for it.
Bill?
Yeah, I would generally agree. I mean, it's a very tight site. It's an odd configuration, and it's from driving back there, it was tough to spin around and make my way out. But so I think the conditions that the board should impose on construction and trying to limit the activity are going to be critical here. But it seems like a reasonable ask, and if voting, I would support it.
Dave Veach?
Yeah, certainly, this is not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood. It's a real improvement on the lot. I think I understand that looking at that number about getting up to 80% of the coverage of the upland, but when you looking on site and with Mike's explanation, it makes a great deal of sense, and I don't think that's the right metric to look at it in. So I will enthusiastically support it.
Paul?
Yes, I agree with Dave Veach's comments. It seems to me it is not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood.
Dave Thompson?
Thank you. I agree with my cohorts here. Anything that the Actons do is perfection. Definitely in favor, and I, of course, will vote yes.
This is a huge improvement as far as I'm concerned. The thought that was put into it and the fact that they got all the neighbors involved, I mean, this is what we like to see. An excellent project. So, Paul, what kind of a condition do you think we can come up with on this?
Well, clearly it's a tight site, and I'm not sure we can contain all construction and so forth on the site. I'm wondering what the input would be from the applicants as to what they want for restrictions.
Yeah, I should say too, the Actons, have you discussed with being able to use like the property right next to you during the off season or anything like that?
I haven't as of yet, but we've spoken to the neighbors and we've told them we don't plan on, starting until after Labor Day and would certainly, stop at the beginning of summer. What we do have, which is nice, is an existing 12-foot wide gate on the property that is at I don't know if you noticed it, but gives you access to the property. And where the existing house is, we should be able to use that whole area for parking for all the construction vehicles. The homes, I have not spoken to them, but they do also have a lower parking area that I may ask if we could possibly, when they're not there, put any overflow. But the fact that we have the driveway going right to that gate should provide good access. But it is going to be a challenging site to develop. I am going to be the general contractor. I will be there every day. There will be a dumpster on site. I'll make sure it's covered because it's also a windy area here. But I've always sort of prided myself on doing a good job with the town, with the couple of projects I've done.
So, in other words, that condition could be that all vehicles be kept on your property or with permission from neighbors on theirs. How would that be?
That would be fine.
Okay. And then secondly, do you think you'd have, if you start in September, will it be done by June 15th?
All of the outside work certainly should be done. And I think Cheryl would kill me if I don't have it done by then. That would be the plan. There may be some things, inside, but.
Okay, so if we just said something about like June 20th, that only inside construction would be allowed after June 20th.
Yeah, I believe that would be fine.
Okay. Paul, you think that will work, and anything else do we need to add to that?
I think we can modify our normal conditions and just say that, well, I'll move to approve the application as submitted with the condition that all construction activity and vehicles would be contained on site or on neighboring property as obtained by permission by the applicant. That no construction will take place prior to Labor Day of 2021, and that between June 30th and Labor Day of 2022, no exterior construction will be allowed, no work shall be permitted on the weekends, and construction activity shall be between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. only.
All right, very good.
Dave Beach seconds.
Okay, so we'll vote on that. Dave Beach,
Beach votes yes.
Paul,
Sample votes yes.
Dave Thompson,
Dave Thompson, yes.
Dennis,
Sullivan votes yes.
and I vote yes. That's a unanimous vote. Thank you very much, Mr. and Mrs. Acton and Mr. Ford. Good
Thank
luck.
you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Thank
Thank
you
you.
for staying so late as well. Appreciate your time.
Okay, very good. Okay, so I want to thank Dennis. Dennis, this is your last day and is moving on to other things. But your wise and sage advice over the years, we're going to miss you. So thank you for helping the Zoning Board of Appeals, and thank you from the town of Chatham for your time and effort. It's greatly appreciated.
Well, thank you. It's been fun doing it. I spent 40 years doing real estate law, and I can honestly say that the Chatham Zoning Board had to be the best regulatory board I'd ever seen. And I'm going to miss it, but keep up the good work, and I'll be watching you on TV.
All right, and thank you very much for the kind words. Okay, we got some minutes that we ought to approve.
Yes, this is Paul Semple. I'll move to approve the minutes as amended.
Dave Beach seconds.
Okay, we need to vote. Dave Each,
Beach votes yes.
Paul,
Sample votes yes.
Dave Thompson,
Dave Thompson, yes.
Dennis,
Sullivan votes yes.
and I vote yes. Okay, I think we're about done. We need to adjourn. So I'll take a vote of everybody and we'll note the time at the moment, 7:12, Sarah. To adjourn, Dave Each,
Beach votes yes.
Paul,
Sample votes yes.
Dave Thompson,
Dave Thompson, yes.
Dennis,
Sullivan votes yes.
Megan,
Story votes yes.
Bill.
Grau votes yes.
All right, and I vote yes, and it is 7:13. Thank you, one and all. Thank you very much, Sarah. Thank you, Mark, and anybody in there with you. And we'll see everybody for our last meeting like this. in
Our
2 weeks.
last fully remote meeting.
Yes. All right.
All right,
Over
take
now,
care, everyone.
Sarah.